Hello, this is George Perez, and you're listening to Southern Fried Geekery. And if you're hearing my voice, then you probably already know that.
1, 2, 3. Ready to roll into this?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Ready to do it?
Yep.
Get the game face on?
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming.
It has been.
Just gonna look me in the eyeballs, Craig. Let's just stare at each other for a moment.
You know,
Matt, hum some romantic music, man. Get it going.
100 episodes is nothing.
I am the Antichrist.
Barry Manilow sings Satan.
What was it? Pat Boone that sang all of the metal songs?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
That was pretty insane.
Guys, this is our 100th episode.
100 of these fucking things.
100th episode. I cannot believe it.
And we still have listeners. That's the amazing part.
And they're growing. More people want to listen to what we have to say, and I have no idea why, because I say some dumb shit a lot.
Yeah, me too.
But
I recommended Obnoxiously, Crazy
Yeah.
with Obnoxious the Clown in it, and people came back the next week. So.
Wait, you did what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I miss that?
Yeah.
Did I just block it out of my memory?
Probably.
It's best.
It was one of my on the menu books.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And
no,
it was
I do
so
remember
bad
that.
that
it was bad.
I had to come back and apologize for
Yeah.
recommending
I
it.
do.
And
remember
he only recommended it because I didn't get to it first, so I have to accept it.
so Craig threw himself on that grenade
Yeah.
for you. That was mighty nice of you, Craig.
No, I blame Marvel for putting out bullshit.
I don't blame you for that either. You should probably blame Marvel. I mean, lots of people just blame Marvel for everything. Though.
Not that all of their stuff's bullshit, but that one was definitely bullshit.
It was a swing and a miss.
These things happen. But hey, you out there in Radio Land, you fearless listeners, you comic book nerds, you people who come back and listen to this week after week after week, welcome back to our 100th episode. Just a landmark for us. I when we started this thing, I didn't know if we would make it here. Like, I mean, you try something new, you see where it's going, you put your toes in the water. But here we are,
100.
100 episode, and that's literally 100 weeks later. Like, we've put out extra episodes, but we have not missed a week yet.
We have not.
When we decided to start this thing, I reached out. You and I had been talking about it for a little bit. I reached out to our buddies over at 11 O'Clock Comics, and I was like, what's one piece of advice you can give us? And I forget if it was Vince or Jason or Dap, which one it was, but they were like, get on a schedule, keep it. If you're going to put out an episode every 2 weeks, you put out an episode every 2 weeks. And we decided we were going to do one every week. And we've held to that, and I'm really, really proud of us.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes.
No.
And that's kind of the litmus on a podcast. So to be at 10 times that is pretty exciting.
And now we've got our brother Matt with us.
Yeah.
We've gone through some personnel, as it were, but that's okay. We had fun while it lasted.
Well, the first 100 episodes were going to be like you think of a rocket that blasts you off.
Right.
Those were the rocket that blasted us off.
They were.
And now we're moving into the stratosphere.
Or
something.
Are we going to cue Elton John playing Rocket Man in this? Well, I guess if you're new to this, you might want to know what the fuck you're listening to. Who are these guys bragging on themselves? We are the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. As usual, I am, for the 100th time, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And we are super excited to be bringing you this 100th episode today. We've got something really special lined up for you guys. For those of you who are listening, we sat somebody in the fourth chair for our 100th episode that, I don't know about you guys, I had a lot of fun. Fun doing that interview. A gem of a human being, dropped a lot of wisdom on us, dropped a lot of really cool stories on us. And it didn't feel like we were interviewing a stranger. It felt like we had somebody in the fourth chair who was just comfortable to talk to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Real easy.
Yeah. And just one of the nicest people I've ever met.
100%. And for those of you who are wondering what we're talking about, last week, so we did a little prep work. And it's not usual that we do this much prep work because, quite frankly, we're lazy sometimes. When you're doing this week after week after week, you get to say that. But we did some prep work, and we got a hold of a friend, a buddy now, somebody that I think we can say that to, and we got him. He was going to be at a local con, and so we said, hey, I know you're here to make money. We know you're here to get your hustle on, do your thing. But what would you mind if we carved some time out? Would you mind if we sat down with you and did a little chat? And he was like, yeah, dude, hour work for you? And we were like, hell yeah. because we were just thinking like 15 minutes or so. And so we met up with none other than Mr. Freddie Williams II. And we got him to sit down on the fourth chair, and it was awesome.
Yep.
We've had other creators in the fourth chair before, like we've done some interviews before, but never. I don't think we've ever done anything to this depth or that length. And so this felt really special.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Yeah.
So let's tell you what, let's stop here and let's shoot over straight to that interview, and let's let Mr. Freddie talk for himself, man. Freddie Williams II. Hey everybody, welcome back to another great show. This is one I'm really, really excited about. I know my brethren here are as well. This is episode 100, guys.
Wow.
We did it. It's taken a long time, exactly 100 weeks. And they said we would never complete anything. What are they talking about? Who knows?
I heard somewhere it's 10 episodes that most podcasts don't survive. If you get past 10, you're going to...
Really?
Yeah.
We did well. We've had a few members come and go, but here we are. And we are, I think, blessed is the word that I want to use. We
Excited.
Excited, benefit, giddy to have... We have a gentleman sitting in our fourth chair today that I have been, and I think the guys have been as well, a big fan of his work for years now.
Yeah.
And the fact that he agreed to sit down and talk to us for our 100th episode, I have been grinning for about a week. My jaw hurts. I've been smiling so much.
I love this guy's art so much that even if it's a book that I'm not interested in reading, I buy the book.
It's gorgeous. And that man is none other than Mr. Freddie Williams II. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for all the really nice stuff that now I have to live up to.
See, the thing is you've already lived up to him. Now you just get to coast. Now you can just kind of go do what you want because we've already said the nice things. We can't take it back. No, so normally if you've listened to our show before, you know that usually we bring a roundtable book that we have all read and we discuss it. We kind of break it down. We talk about its merits and what we liked about it. And then we each bring we'll each bring our own book that maybe the other guys haven't read. But because we have a guest in the fourth chair, we're just going to talk, I think. Yeah. I think we're just going to kind of see what's up and try to dive into is it okay if I call you Freddie, or do you prefer Mr. Williams? Mr. Williams II?
Freddie is fine.
I don't want to be too...
The second, we'll just go to the second.
I don't want to be too fresh. I don't want to seem too familiar.
I have one friend who we go all the way back to high school, and he's always called me Fred. And he's the only one in my life that calls me Fred, and it even sounds weird coming from him. Freddie is great.
Perfect.
I'm a 42-year-old man, but I still like Freddie. That's just what I prefer to be called, so please do.
I'm really glad you finished that sentence because I was afraid there for a second I was going to stop with "I have one friend," so I was going to
he's the only one.
I'll be your friend. And so let's talk about. I'm just going to list some of your works real quick, and if there's anything that I've left out that you want to throw out there, please just thump me on the ear and tell me why I need to talk about this thing. Freddie has done some really great work, and I think where I don't know if it's safe to say or fair to say that this is your largest, most well-known work, but your crossovers that you've done with James Tynion IV, the TMNT Batman crossovers for DC.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you've just finished your third volume of that. It's spectacular. You also did a He-Man and Thundercats crossover. You've done Masters of the Universe crossing over with Injustice, which is a great book by Tom Taylor, but also a really popular video game. You did 31 issues of Robin. You did 25 issues of the TMNT universe. You've done JLA All-Stars. And, I was getting to wonder there for a second that, this guy just hates Marvel, but I found a Marvel book that you did.
Yeah, a couple Marvel things.
Yeah, you did 3 issues at least of the Legendary Star-Lord, which I think I actually think I own those. I'm not a big Star-Lord fan, but I think I did grab those. And so you've just got a catalog full of stuff that are just it's impressive. You have an art style that is not it's not a house style, which you see a lot of artists try to emulate. Often, you bring something to the table that's not widely seen in the comics, in the plethora of comics that we read. You've just got kind of a style that when I see it, I say, "Oh, that's Freddie Williams II." That's
I mean,
Freddie.
for sure, you can tell when you look at a book that he's worked on, whether it's his or just from the style.
Yeah. So I guess a good place to start with that is how did you develop that style? Where does that style come from? What are your roots? I know for a long time you worked digitally, and then you've kind of adjusted to working traditionally now. Did you pull something from that digital way of working that has really translated into making your images, your style, something different?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for the great intro, by the way.
You're more than welcome.
But I want to just throw out something real quick that I just did the covers for Ninja Turtle Universe, so it's not like I drew all of those the 25 issues. And there was something else that you said that I had. The amount of Robin comics. So I was involved in those, but like a chunk of those, like maybe 10 of those, I just did covers for.
Okay.
So the others, so it was still like almost 2 years worth of work of doing interiors and, covers and stuff. But there was a while where I went to the Flash, and during that time I was just doing covers for Robin. I just want to put that out in case, just to set it straight, I guess. But thank you very much. And I still work digital on the layout end of things. So working out my compositions and rough layouts and stuff, I'll still work out things in Adobe Photoshop. And I wrote this book called The DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics. This was back in 2009, so that's a full 10 years ago. So now I feel elderly. And in that book, I think it's like chapter 10, I have something that's called the hybrid workflow, or the hybrid method of working. And it's the same. So anybody who has that book can see how I work now, which is digital layouts, print out in like a gray or a black or a blue, depending on what you're doing, and then execute the page traditionally from there. And the reason that kind of led me to that was I was finding that I enjoyed the stuff I was doing at conventions, like con sketches and stuff, more than my actual professional paid work, which was all digital. So there was this big difference. And I felt like I was really enjoying the experimentation on paper and oh no, I've made a mistake, but how do I try to turn this into an asset to the piece where, I try other techniques to either cover it up or add to it so it looked intentional, happy accidents, in other words.
Right. Whereas in digital, you just erase it and redo it. Yeah.
And so then and not that everyone's digital work is too clean, but mine was getting to be too clean, I felt. So anyway, it was just a development from working on commissions. Then I started implementing the ink wash or more organic style on covers. Then I did this short story for Dark Horse on a book called Robert E. Howard's Savage Sword. And it was an 8-page story for Conan that I did ink wash for all 8 pages. And that was the first time I had done it sequentially. And this was in 2013, I think. And that was kind of the proof of concept of how long does this take to do sequentially? Can I maintain my focus and energy and not get kind of blinded by the details? And is it okay if I do this for a whole series? And then that's what led to Batman Ninja Turtles in addition to some other stuff. But that was the sort of evolution of getting into this current way of working. A lot of my earlier stuff I was quite happy with at the time, but looking back at it, there's no like one piece that I was super excited about. It was just like, wow, look at the volume of work. And it's competent and occasionally sometimes good, but it was just the quantity of it. And then looking at the more recent stuff, I feel like there's a higher frequency of the number of pages where I'm like, I feel like I really achieved something on this page. Either it's through the rendering or the amount of detail, the amount of characters or something. But there's a smaller volume, like a smaller stack of pages, but there's just more that I enjoy. So it's a trade-off, but it's one that I'm enjoying at least now. Who knows, I'll swing back around to the cleaner style at some point. I'm not sure.
Well, I think artistry and creativity is an evolution, right? Like you should never get stuck in the same place to where you're just kind of complacent, maybe. And so, I mean, you look at guys. I mean, he's the master, but Kirby really didn't become Kirby until he was well into his 40s, if that. And so, it's not like he just started drawing then. He'd been drawing forever. So there's an evolution of style that I think all artists kind of go through that and get to where you are now. And I actually like that. I like to see artists who try new things. An artist that we talk about quite often is John Romita Jr. And, he's a great, he's one of the greats. I don't necessarily vibe with what he's doing now, but I really do vibe with the fact that he's willing to take chances and he's constantly doing new stuff.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I loved his, Thor stuff and his Punisher War Journal stuff. That
yes.
Like all the characters almost look like they were carved out of granite or something. Just there's so much mass and grit and stuff like that. That's the stuff that I really gravitate towards and still look at. Klaus Janson is amazing as his inker. We were talking about him a bit yesterday. Right. So yeah. And I just love Klaus Janson's sort of, his confidence, and he's a great artist himself. So he knows how to, like if he sees some sketchy stuff on a page of pencils, he knows just the correct big brush line to cut right through all of the sort of sketchy pencils and to make it a solid looking figure. so he's great with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the first inker that I really brought to my attention. I guess made me realize what exactly an inker can bring to a page, because I saw Frank Miller's layouts for Dark Knight Returns, and then of course the finished page, and it was amazing. I mean, Frank Miller's layouts were rough layouts.
Yeah.
I mean, and then I went back and looked at those Punisher series that Klaus did. And that's when it really hit home how much Klaus brought to Dark Knight Returns, because so much of that I was like, oh wow, it felt like it was just as much a Klaus work as it was a Frank Miller work when it came to the art.
Yeah, because Frank Miller is fantastic with his storytelling sensibilities, but in my opinion, his finishes can be a little loose or a little wonky or something. But Klaus, having such a solid foundation, helps to solidify any inconsistencies and ground the work in a way that makes it what it is. I mean, whenever you see it, it just feels so solid. And then Klaus bringing that to John Romita Jr.'s work. I mean, John Romita Jr. has been quoted as saying, my style, he's like, I don't really have a style. My style is just deadline style, just to get it done quickly. And so he's passing off pages. And of course, he's super solid with his structure and everything, but he's passing off pages where he's used like the side of a pencil holder, so like the large lead is sticking out far, and he's basically using that just to kind of rough in a shadow. So he's been very loose with his pencils. Then he gives it to Klaus Janson, and it's like if in the hands of a lesser inker, they'd probably do like a lot of thin little scratchy lines, and that might be an interesting effect, but it would lose solidity. It would lose some of the like groundedness, whatever that John Romita Jr. has, or that Klaus brings. Yeah. And Klaus just knows exactly where to. I just love the sheer audacity of some of his lines. He just like cuts through the page and in a very confident way with these big fat brush strokes. And they're even bigger when you look at the, original art. And it's something that I struggle with, is to just be bold and dark and just go for it, and he does it all the time. So.
Well, that leads into, do you prefer to do your own inking, or do you enjoy having an inker work on your art with you?
I haven't had a lot of inkers work on my stuff. And part of that is that whenever I was younger, I made the mistake of working. When I say younger, I mean like right out of high school, so before any published work or whatever. I made the mistake of working with some inkers that they were good inkers, but they were. I was in the more of the image house mindset, so I had like a million lines, and they were much more old school, and so I got this bad impression of working with an inker because, frankly, our styles just didn't mesh. Right. And I was expecting Scott Williams, and I was getting something else. Right. And that just led me down the road of I'll just ink my own stuff. So now whenever I think of a page, I don't often think of it in terms of what I will need to do in pencils. It's just I'm thinking layout and then inks. So I've kind of skipped over the pencil stage.
I was going to say, with as much as with the gray wash that you use, I would think that that would kind of be inherently necessary. Yeah. You would have to, because that's so solidified in your style, you would have to really, really trust an inker to be able to bring that level, like those depths of your grays and stuff to your.
Yeah. And just on a side note, my wife Kiki, who will, if she hears this later, will go, oh God, I wish you hadn't said this, but she helps me a lot on every page. So I do trust her on. Okay. There's plenty of stuff where it's like, the texture on a wall or a big explosion, I'll do a part of it. And then I'm like, I ask her, because she's very good. She has a great hand-to-eye control. She can mimic shapes and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so she'll do like a base or a secondary layer of ink wash. And then I might go over the top of it. But oftentimes she's quite good at just getting it done. In other words, as close as we work, because we work together every day. Right. As close as we work together, I do trust her to do it. But yeah, it would require I could not just take a page and just rough in some stuff and send it off and feel confident it's going to come out great, or something that would look similar to what I have in mind. I would expect to get something like a third entity back that neither me or the inker probably imagined, be something that came out of the telepod and the fly, that's how it would be in my brain, at least. Right.
So have you guys, obviously we're all married at this table, and I think we all know
to each other,
but
we don't understand that.
Not in Arkansas. We haven't legalized that yet. No, we all have our respective spouses, and I think in any relationship you develop a sort of shorthand with your spouse so that you kind of know what's going on at home and everything. And I assume that's also true with your wife. Have you guys been able to develop like a secondary shorthand for your artistic work?
Yeah, there's quite she basically has her hands on, or has an involvement in every single page that I do, even if it's something like masking off an area so I can do splatters. But it's usually like, she knows the routine. We've done it for several years now. So, it's like I'll put a stack of pages over there and, on her desk is what I'm picturing in my mind when I gesture to off screen. No one can even see me, but I'm gesturing to something to make clear my point. And I'll put a stack over there and she basically knows immediately what to do. But if it's a little nebulous, I'll just write, just a real quick Post-it note or something like that. But we're working together, so it's not like I'm far away. She can just say, "Hey, did you need this done on these pages?" And
gotcha.
And that's it. Yeah,
it's got to be fun.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
It's got to be a lot of fun.
Kiki's really great to work with. Anyway, we've been really good friends well before we ever got married and stuff. So we get along just really well, and she's awesome.
she is. I've had a chance to talk to her this weekend.
Oh, that's right. I haven't got a chance to see her. I might swing by there and say hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was dealing with other people when you came over with the gargoyle piece and stuff. Yeah,
I can't wait. I haven't thrown that up on Instagram yet. I can't wait for folks to see that. So a large portion of your work over the past few years have been these crossovers that they pull heavily from what I call the Saturday morning cartoon properties. And I say that endearingly. I grew up on those things. I love them and I still watch them today. Did something, how did you fall into that? Like doing these properties like with He-Man and Turtles and Batman, was that something that you were inherently drawn to?
Don't skip over Thundercats.
And Thundercats, I'm sorry. gotta give Lino his props. Okay. Is that something that you wanted to do? Did you seek that out or was that brought to you?
It was kind of a combination. First of all, my own history, like whenever I was in fourth grade, He-Man and Thundercats were just my whole life. Like that was, I could not, I had already seen stuff like Super Friends before that, so I was aware and I loved Batman and I loved Superman and stuff. But my life revolved around seeing those two cartoons and playing with those toys and stuff. So in my mind, they already seem inexorably linked. But I think so I lucked into, my timing was just really good with Batman and Ninja Turtles. I had seen that there was an announcement on Twitter where, a Green Lantern and Star Trek crossover was going to happen. So I knew that that's an IDW and IDW and Ninja Turtles. Let me say that again. So I saw that was an IDW and DC Comics crossover. And if they were going to do that crossover, they were likely going to be doing others. And just on a whim, I emailed my editor, Jim Chadwick, and said, hey, if you guys ever consider doing a Batman and Turtles crossover, I would love for you to consider my art. And I linked him to some of the stuff online. And they just so happened to be going over the artistic choices or the artist choices that day.
Just kismet.
Yeah. And he even wrote back to me and said, we were joking in the office here that you must have been psychic because that's exactly what we were talking about. And so that's how I got the gig. And that I never have good timing. Ever have good timing. So at least that I'm aware of. I guess maybe you leave 5 minutes late and you miss the bus that was going to hit you. So you don't realize you had good timing. But I was just shocked that I got that. But that then, towards the end of Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 1, after it was already starting to do pretty well, I contacted Jim and I said, hey, we're getting close to the end here of Batman Ninja Turtles. Do you have any ideas for another project? If there's other crossovers, I'm interested. So I just made myself available and made clear I would love to do whatever they have in mind. Like, what do you guys have on the table? And he said, well, we're talking about maybe doing something with He-Man or with Thundercats. But he didn't necessarily say together. He just said or. Because I think DC now owns the rights to Thundercats outright. I'm not sure.
I believe so.
Okay. And
I
so
believe that's correct.
I think Warner Brothers has it. And, of course, that's who owns DC. So I think they brought it into the house.
Yeah. So it was just the fact that I was making myself available when he brought it up. I said, oh my God, please make it be the original classic versions instead of like a newer redesign. Because there's plenty of like 2000X and there's a 2000 for He-Man. And then there was the 2010 reboot of Thundercats. And they have their merits. I'm not saying they're just flat out bad, but I just wanted to draw the stuff that my 8-year-old counterpart was just super excited for. And so that's how that happened. And then once you do 2 of them, that's the start of a pattern. And then other people start coming to you. And IDW asked if I would do like a series of covers that had, it's for a series called First Strike that had, G.I. Joe, Rom the Space Knight, Mask, and Transformers. And all of those were in the series. So I did those covers. And then at that point, I'm basically telling everyone I love to do crossovers. And so other people started coming to me. So I'm actually doing like a bunch of covers that haven't been announced yet for IDW that are, some of them are crossovers and some of them are just for like, those same type of properties and stuff like G.I. Joe and, stuff. So,
Right.
And I'm just happy to do it. I mean, that's the stuff that I don't feel like this is stuff that I'm just doing to pay the bills. I feel like this is like the most enjoyable stuff I've ever worked on. And I know that it won't last forever, so I'm just waiting for that shoe to drop where I'm now drawing whatever they just asked for because I have to,
Yeah.
Well, I know that some of that led to, obviously working on the Turtles, it led to working with Eastman. Now, were you, was Turtles in your zeitgeist before this? Was it something, because like for me, I'm at that age where Turtles kind of happened after they became a boom after I had grown out of watching Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, you were aware of it.
But I was aware of it. Now, I love the comic books, of course, but getting to work with Eastman, I'm assuming you had some of that. And how was that for you?
Oh, man. You're giving me the good questions. That's the softball. But the reason I say that is because Kevin Eastman is one of my artistic heroes. And back when I was about 12, that's whenever I was 8, it was He-Man and Thundercats. When I was 12, it was the Tim Burton Batman film. And then about a year later was the first Ninja Turtle film, the live action one. And I was into the comics. One of my older cousins had made me aware of some of the reprint ones where the Ninja Turtles all had red masks. Those.
Right.
And so it's not like they were brand new to me, but that combination within about a year really congealed. So Batman and Turtles were kind of fused in my brain as well. The Tim Burton film and then that live action Ninja Turtle film visually have some similarities. Tim Burton has some more like purples and blues and stuff, but I'm just saying the darkness level and how the shadows and the grittiness of the city. So I was eventually, whenever I got those large reprint editions of the Ninja Turtles where everyone had red masks, in the back of I think it's book 2 or 4, I can't remember, but those are the first 2 I got, had like these bios for Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. And the Kevin Eastman one, it says, his birthday was May 30th, 1967, I think. And my birthday is May 30th, 1977. So we're 15 years apart. So he's 15 years older than me to the day. And when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, we're cosmically linked and we'll be best friends someday, because that's just what kids think. And I've told him that since, and he thought that was, he got a real kick out of that, because he was like, and we are friends. Look, we're friends. So we were doing, he did like a series of alternate covers for the first Batman Ninja Turtles series. And I was honored to see that. But we hadn't met yet. And then he had emailed me, or his rep emailed me and asked if I'd be interested in showing some artwork at the gallery that was in the San Diego. It was like in the bottom level of the IDW's offices. Nice. There was a San Diego art gallery. I'm not sure if it's still there or not, because it's possible they closed it. I can't remember. But at the time, this would have been 2016, I think. He asked if he could display some of the pages, and I was like, oh, absolutely. So like I sent him to him like a week before, and then I then flew out there and we had like a signing together, and I actually got to hang out with him, and we did some sketches for people in the audience and stuff, and that was like a real magical night. It's very clear in my brain, and he's just such a nice guy. Like, there's a risk of meeting your heroes where they might end up being jerks or let you down, and Kevin basically lives up to all the expectations, but while being humble. Right. So after that, we worked together on the Commandy Challenge. We did a single issue together where I was actually working in his home office with him. We were working on the same pages and stuff. And he has like this big archive of all this old work because he doesn't throw anything away. And he was like, yeah, feel free to take a look at anything. So we're sitting there. He's made breakfast, and I'm sitting there, with a binder of his early layouts for Ninja Turtles that he's done in ballpoint ink, like way back 30 years ago or whatever. And it was a very surreal morning. I was flipping through the pages and going, that's Kevin Eastman over there. And he's like making breakfast, and I'm looking through his Ninja Turtle artwork, and we're working together in the other room. Is so weird. But wonderful, of course. Right. Where your brain keeps trying to pop yourself out of that. Like this can't be real.
How did this happen?
Yeah. And how did breakfast taste?
It was great.
Yeah. Didn't say you didn't have to pretend the burnt eggs were good.
These are really good. No, but Kevin actually, before him and Peter created the Ninja Turtles, he was He was a cook. That was his main job. He was I guess he cooked a lot of breakfast stuff and then seafood and stuff. So he's actually a very good cook. And,
very nice.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I want brunch with
Kevin Eastman.
I want Eastman brunch.
Jeez, nice.
So yeah, Kevin is fantastic, and I owe that as well to the Batman Ninja Turtle stuff. The fact that I mean Jim Chadwick, the editor who basically let me draw this, I owe him so much from this. It's really totally changed the trajectory of my career in the best way.
So I guess in following that theme, are there any properties that you want to tackle that you haven't gotten to tackle yet? Do you have any things in mind? And of course, that's not saying, hey, drop us something that's not admitted yet, but just out of curiosity.
Uh,
I like the 60s Planet of the Apes stuff. I like it. So, and
if anybody's listening out there, I would pay good money to see Freddie Williams II draw.
Speaking Craig's love language.
Aside from that, I mean, Voltron, the lion version of the Hark. I would love to draw more with the Transformers. I've done several covers that have had Optimus Prime or Soundwave and stuff on the cover, but I would love to draw more of that. And more G.I. Joe stuff. I mean, the 80s film, the cartoon film that had Cobra Law with Nemesis Enforcer and Globulus and all them, that was something that I grew up watching quite a bit. So I would love to just do a comic adaptation of that 30 years after the movie came out to just draw that exact story. But, take my time with it and everything.
So you don't despise drawing robots? Because I mean, I talked to one artist who was like, I just don't understand how they actually move, so it's hard to draw that. Yeah. So you don't have that sort of mental hang up with that? Or?
I haven't had to draw them sequentially where it's panel to panel, but and maybe that becomes a challenge where you're like, wait, how do I draw it from this angle and make it look like there's motion but keep it consistent? But I just cheat an awful lot. So you just every line that's supposed to be straight, you don't have to make straight. I mean, it's not like a rigid form that's in front of you. You can give it a little bit of bounce, and it looks more like they're lively or alive or moving or something. Yeah. So curved lines or motion, basically like jagged lines that make the impression that they're moving. Anything you can do to give them life. And even if their eyes aren't supposed to move, although they did all the time in the cartoons. Yeah. Even if not, you just make them bigger. You make them look surprised. You know, it's like if somebody's wearing a hard, like a Japanese samurai mask or something, you can still kind of imply a little bit of surprise. If, you can manipulate it to make it fit.
Yeah, kind of on that same theme. I read a lot of older commentary on Steve Ditko, and that was one of the things that he had to figure out how to do with Spider-Man, because he's like, you've got this boy in a mask. How do you make emotion show? And that, like the work that he did with the eyes, particularly making the eyes bigger. And I know, when they created Deadpool, that was a problem they ran into, was finding a way to let the emotion bleed through, and weird little crinkles in the corners, essentially.
I think if anybody is listening to this who didn't, it's like they're taking for granted all the visual language evolution for somebody like Spider-Man, and then that leads over to Deadpool. That Steve Ditko was just inventing the language of how far you can push it or how far you can get away with it. Do you have him just standing upright like a normal guy, or do you have him crouched down all the time? Eventually it becomes like everyone knows you just make him always crouched down. If he's just talking, you make him hanging upside down, or he's on a wall or something, just to make him feel more Spider-Man-y. And that's part of the visual language of the eyes as well. It's just stretching reality. But, something like the Tobey Maguire movies where his eyes are static, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the more recent MCU Sony merger version of Spider-Man, where his eyes almost have lenses, telescopic lenses that move, that's like a real world solution to that problem. Yeah. Right. But even if you don't have a real world solution, just cheat it. You know, as an artist, keep it within some realm of reality. But I just fudge it all the time with robots, just whatever.
It's amazing to me how it took 50 years for film to be able to do something that a guy like Ditko accomplished in the 60s. I mean, he had it figured out, and film has just kind of figured out a way to do that. And so when people always make the comments and stuff, and I have to roll my eyes when they do it, when they call comics just storyboards. I'm like, no, it's way different. Right. They've had these effects and stuff that are available to them for way longer than anything. The technology is just now catching up to where live action can get close. And I still I got a chance a few years ago to go look at the original Amazing Fantasy pages that are at the the library in Washington.
Wow.
Yeah, they're there. If you're ever,
I wasn't even aware that they were at
if
Washington.
you're ever in DC, go to
Yeah.
the Library of Congress. You have to set up an appointment first, but you can do so on their website. The original Ditko pages for Amazing Fantasy 15 are in the Library of Congress, and you can go sit with them and just ruminate with them.
Who donated those? I'd like to know.
It was anonymous. They do not know, and they will not say.
Wow.
Well, that's I had almost the exact same question, but I was going to preface it with, at the time that he was drawing those pages, or like Kirby was drawing all those pages and stuff, basically the original artwork had basically zero value. It was kind of a nuisance to the
They were
publishers.
cutting it up and giving it to people out.
They were giving it to
reviewing,
people
yeah.
who were coming through. They'd give it to kids if they were in a tour. I think there was even Steve Ditko maybe was using them as cutting mats for other pages, which to think of now, just everybody should be like,
cringeworthy, right?
covering their face with both hands.
Yeah.
It's a scary thought that so many pages ended up like that. But I heard this great story. Now this is about Jack Kirby, but it's related to original art that there was a time where Neil Adams and Frank Miller, they would go to a convention, and if they saw some pages that were, in quotes, out in the wild of Jack Kirby's original art pages, a lot of his art got either thrown away, incinerated, or given out as gifts. And then eventually some people just started taking them. I'm talking about from the offices of DC and Marvel Comics. They would keep them because they didn't know what else to do, but they could feel that this isn't trash. This is something else. I should keep this maybe. But eventually they started selling those, and Jack Kirby was in a position where he wasn't getting any sort of residual from that. So people were benefiting from kind of like something that was considered disposable at one point. So, Frank Miller and Neil Adams were buying the pages off the floor and just going over and giving them to Jack Kirby at different conventions, just giving them to him to have or do what he wanted to, which I think is one of the most powerful. I'm actually getting goosebumps right now thinking about it.
For sure.
It's such an amazing thing for these, at the time, very young creators that were in the sort of prime of their power or something to give back to a previous generation, to show respect and love towards Jack Kirby. And
Certainly makes me rethink my viewpoint on certain people. So, I mean,
not everyone has a perfect aspect to their personality on all angles.
Yeah.
That's just a place where
Humans
both
are
of them
complex.
work.
So, and sometimes you don't always see people on their best days.
Yes.
So you can add that in there as well.
It's just that, like that story on the backdrop of, I think last year, year before last, when the Batman and Bill came out, and you learn about Bill Finger, who basically died alone in his hotel,
like a pauper's
and
grave, and all that stuff.
They had to go they had to go find his grave because nobody knew where it was at.
Yeah.
And so when you hear those stories about these people these men, these creators who created these icons and that weren't allowed to have anything from it, it just
It's incredible.
Yeah, they got into a position. I'm not even. I would have to see like contracts and read over contracts to know what people, if their expectations were met, because there was a time where original art wasn't even really a consideration.
Right. No.
Nobody knew what to really do with it, and you might keep it as a keepsake. But if you're turning in 30 pages a month, that stuff accumulates very quickly. And somebody like Jack, who's doing 2 books a month, it's like 60 pages a month or something like that. So maybe his contract never addressed it. So then that just created this weird legal position where it's like, I think if this is correct, that Marvel had a hard time giving his artwork back because they wanted him to sign a waiver that said, by receiving this artwork, I also acknowledge I don't own any copyright claims to this, to these characters or something. And so then it's like, oh, none of this was addressed in the previous contract, so we all have different expectations.
It was all
it's a
like,
shame,
It was all an implied work for hire thing, which at that point in time they didn't know anything about. So, and that's even worse when I hear people talk about it now, like, oh yeah, I just did this and gave away everything for creators today. I'm like, what? And I don't know if we talk about this yesterday, I'm in law school. So like learning about these contracts and stuff, I'm just like, what? Like we've had these lessons. Why would you do that?
If you need, I've done work for hire work. And
well, no, I mean,
but
to sign over everything.
If you're if
you're not allowed the copyright to that or anything?
It depends on the arrangement. I mean, somebody like Rob Liefeld, who's co-created Deadpool and Cable and Domino and all these other characters, he probably has a significant amount of clout at Marvel. So a character he creates, he could probably have some leverage to negotiate some sort of stake with the character. But if you're a brand new artist who is just like, I have some ideas, or if they say, come up with some ideas for this new character, that artist might either be ignorant of the idea that it's an option to try to get some stake in it, or he might think, well, it's there, but I just don't want to make myself a nuisance to Marvel because I'm so new. I'll just take the job because it's the job and hope to build something off the back of this that I'll eventually get leverage and then that way I can have a steak. It's just a combination of things. It just depends on where you are in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who was a big influence on you, art wise?
I think the first biggest, within about a month of each other, I saw ElfQuest Book 3, which was illustrated by Wendy Penny, who I think she was about 20 or 25 years ahead of her time artistically. Her inking was a little contemporary for the time, so in other words, it was 1970s. I discovered her work in the 90s, and it felt fresh. The inking was a little old-fashioned, but I'm not putting that down. That was just contemporary for the time she drew it. So I'm talking from a lens of a 90s kid looking at it. It was like, wow, this is so awesome, and even the subject matter, and it was fantastic. Well, about a month later, I saw Jim Lee's X-Men issue 272, which is part of the Extinction Agenda, and those two had such an impact on me. Very different types of subject matters and art styles, but made me want to take comic book art serious for a living. Before that, I always drew, and they were comic book subject matters, but I just didn't know what I'd do with it. And then within a year of that, I met somebody who became really influential in my life named Tyrone Crockett, who was a student at Washington High School. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and he was the best artist in the school, and he was a good teacher and a really funny guy and stuff. So we became good friends, but also he became my mentor for sure. So he taught me how to draw with shapes. It was stuff that was from the How to Draw Comics the Marvel way, but it was like seeing it come to life right in front of my eyes, and seeing all the problems he was solving and all this stuff. And then over time, it became primary influences are Jim Lee, Arthur Adams, Mike Mignola, David Finch is in there, Lenniel, Francis Yu, a long list of guys. Frank Miller. If I try to ever look at Frank Miller's work and sort of reverse engineer it in my mind, I'm not joking, I get a headache. It's so good that it has to be a combination of both instinct and understanding of formula for layout. That's beyond probably anyone I've seen. His use of like framing and spot blacks and stuff is so good, and where he knows where to pick out his the few places he does render to draw the eye and stuff. It's so good. It's headache inducing.
I just fall into his Sin City work, especially in that first book. Like I could just sit, like I need to at some point find out if they made a artifact or artist edition version of that without the word balloons, where I can just like look at the pages. Because it's like that's exactly, I think, the prime example of what you're talking about.
Well, and I feel the same way about his 300 stuff.
I'm interested in something you said a while ago when you were talking about the visual language of comics and like transferring into the Ditko-esque, like the eyes and things like that. Was there any of that Eastman and Laird visual language that either came naturally or that you had a hard time adapting into your Turtles work? Or I guess the same could be said with Batman or any of them, but was there any of that visual language for those particular characters that you found difficult to transfer with your style, or was there something that, how did that work?
The Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird stuff, Ninja Turtle stuff is influential even in how, I mean, to me, those are the Turtles, specifically the ones in like book 3 and 4 of those reprint editions. And by that point, they were drawing, I could even like, I mean, it doesn't make sense in this non-visual medium, but I could draw like the way that they drew the legs in volume 1 versus volume 4. They became like these much larger, slightly more humanoid legs, but they were just like big and structured, awesome, that almost looked like they were made of stone. So to me, I'm channeling and influenced by the Eastman Laird Turtles the whole time I'm drawing mine, even though there's a visual difference, but it's like I'm trying to use similar textures, similar shapes in the muscle masses and that sort of thing. As far as difficulty, I think I had, those were very natural to me. It was, whenever it came time to do, to do my take on Batman, because Batman has been drawn by so many artists that, it was difficult trying to find a unique version that wasn't copying somebody, but all the really good ratios of like cape to cowl to shoulder mass, all of those, that's like a formula you have to try to extrapolate. And all of those, there's a lot of those that are already used. Like somebody like Jim Lee has much shorter bat ears, but then you look at somebody like Sam Keith or, you know, where his ears are like 2 foot tall or something. And obviously I can't go as abstract as that, but mine are taller than some, but I also made my Batman just bigger and bulkier than
I was going to say, your Batman's not as lean as other Batmen. Like he's not quite, you know, He-Man, but he's not nearly as skinny as like Jim Lee's Batman was.
Yeah, but that means that my Batman could probably beat up his Batman.
I mean, I would not doubt that.
Wholeheartedly agree. Well, I think we have a few more questions before we need to kind of shut this down. I know you have to get back out to your table, but one thing I'm
sitting here drawing just a beautiful piece while
I'm at the
channeling Simonson.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, I even asked him, "Do you want the Simonson Thor or what?" And he was like, "Whatever you want." I was like, "Simonson, then." So,
Nice.
I think that's the only answer.
That is the correct answer. Yeah.
So, kind of getting away, number one, before we close, I want to hear more about what they have announced that's coming down the line for you, and what would benefit you the most if people who are listening to our podcast just went out and bought, but also, or what you just want them to go buy. But one thing I'm always interested in, and this was a question that Matt brought up, a lot of times when we talk to comics creators, they don't have time to read comics anymore. They don't have time to go out and like consume these things that brought them into the thing.
Yeah.
Is there any, like, are you able to read comics anymore? I mean, like, you're not just working a job. You're working full-time comics. You're touring like a monster for comic conventions, and you've got a wife and you've got a life that you have to balance at the same time. Are you able to carve out time to read comics? And if so, what are you reading?
No, not much. I'm reading the Ninja Turtle, the IDW Ninja Turtle series. That's really strong. And I was reading the
Dave Walker.
Invincible. Yeah, he's great.
Oh, he's a beast. I love that man.
And Matteo Santaluco, he comes and goes, and now he's doing Shredder in Hell, which has been delayed for some reason, but he's amazing. But and I was also reading Invincible when that was around. That was the Ryan Otley and Robert Kirkman. I think it went to like 100 issues or something like that.
We're all fans.
Okay.
Yeah.
I came to the party late than the others did, but we're all fans.
Yeah, the good thing about coming to the party late is that, at least with comics, is that there's just all this material that you can read.
You can get caught up quickly.
Yeah, so it usually takes me a little while to discover stuff. Oftentimes there's a certain feeling that I get looking at specific artists. So I just collect the artist's work, whatever they do, even if it's a sketchbook that has no story in it, that's what I'm collecting. So I'm still buying stuff quite often. And with the Jim Lee stuff, that I'm a big fan of Jim Lee, I tend to be drawn to the X-Men work that he did. A lot of his stuff is great, but if they release a black and white edition, they release another black and white edition, but it's oversized. I'm a sucker. I'm still giving that money, still buying it again. I have so many versions of X-Men, basically number one, but whatever the trade has, it always has X-Men number one plus everything else. And then his Hush stuff. So I have the one that has, it's like the unwrapped version, and then also the noir version. That means the pencils and the inks version. And then also I have the single issues, and then the trade, and then the absolute edition. It's like I just kept buying it over and
Hush
over.
is such an amazing thing, so.
It's great stuff. So, but that's the main stuff. As far as, other books, no. I usually have to wait until I see something that just grips me, and then I'll end up buying the collection. Gotcha. But that means at that point it's probably 8 or more months old. So I'm way behind. When people come to the shows and they ask me about some new series, I'm like, I have no idea. Yeah. You know more about it than me, and I'm listening to you. I have no feedback or input.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. And then I think we get that answer quite a bit.
Yeah.
Very few creators actually have time to read.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing a podcast and working his butt off right now.
Well, I don't really even have time to watch much in the way of TV and stuff like that.
That's what we hear. Yeah.
If it takes your attention away from drawing, it's got to be a very limited window.
Yeah.
And it's usually, you want it to be a very good thing that you're watching. So it needs to be a movie that's probably been out for a little while. You've heard a great buzz about, and then you watch it, and then you're like, oh, this isn't really for me. And that sucks because I've just wasted 3 hours. And, I could have been just sitting here staring at the wall,
Well, guys, y'all got any final questions you want to throw out there, or any?
We're kind of out of time, but can you give just I guess we would just ask you to do a very abbreviated version of your path to being a professional artist? What did that look like?
It was like just being an intensely interested hobbyist, and then skip forward to after there's enough reinforcement by other people, like your peers who are also interested in that, and they're like, wow, I think you're good enough to do probably real comics. And then in 1997, I met a small publisher, a guy named John Olson, who ran Sun Dragon Comics that no one's ever heard of. And he let me draw a like a 3-issue miniseries was something that didn't come out till way, way later, but that at least got me through the mechanics of realizing how to draw a full issue and keeping your focus and trying to be consistent across issues. Then I got, flash forward a little bit, I got hooked up with Palladium Books, which is a role-playing game company, and I did a bunch of spot illustrations for them and some covers over the course of like maybe 50 books, but it's like I'm not the only artist in that.
Right.
And that gave me more experience of just professional deadline stuff. And then some independent work that most people haven't heard of, War God, Lone Bow, Project Eon, and Chance of a Lifetime. Those were all from publishers that are now all defunct. They've all fallen apart. You know, they like publish one book and then they're gone. And then that led into the DC Comics work. That's like the summary of stuff, where you're just working on your own stuff until eventually, hopefully you're close enough in the ballpark of being professional enough. And then they say yes, and then they'll let you in. And
Nice.
Try not to mess up your deadlines.
Well, brother, we're going to let you get out of here. We know you got to go sling some ink, make some cash, do your thing. So, again, we really, really, really appreciate you sitting down with us.
Thank you so much.
Fascinating.
My pleasure.
I've absolutely loved this. I know the guys have as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
guys. I really appreciate
Not
it.
just a nice guy for comics, but legit one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Yeah,
so
thank
it's
you.
been great.
Flat out.
Yeah.
So, all right.
That was a whole lot of fun interviewing him.
Right.
I had a great time. Again, just a super nice guy, and look forward to seeing him in the future at future conventions. He almost always has a commission list going on his website. It's real easy to find, real easy to order, and he does fantastic work.
Yeah.
Did you pick up anything by him at the con?
I did. I got I've been on this kick of Lady Death Dealer, so I had him do a Lady Death Dealer for me, and I had him do a female version of Lion-O from Thundercats. Both of those pieces came out just absolutely amazing, and I bought a couple of prints from him as well, or got a couple of prints from him as well.
Yeah. Really, really. He and his wife / agent Kiki, super nice people. You can really tell that they enjoy what they do for a living. It's really nice to see.
You think you have to, man. And it's insane to me how much time they put in to just living that life. Like, I mean, you think about, we go to work and go home, or go to school and go home, and we're just exhausted. But that couple, as a couple, they are doing cons week after week after week. They are making books, like pumping out work when they get home from those cons, and then still being a couple. Like, that's insane to me. And they do it so well. And that's like sitting down with us, man. They didn't have to do that. Like, there's no, like, we're just a couple of dudes from Arkansas. They didn't have to sit down and like record with us for 45 minutes, but they did. And we had a blast.
We did.
So much fun, and just such great insight into how the industry works, and to how these things that we love are made.
Yeah, I really love the story about him and his wife and her working on pages with him.
Yeah.
How he just sets it
That was
aside.
interesting.
So, yeah.
All right, well, guys, it's our 100th episode. What do we want to talk about? What do we want to do? Do we want to? Did you guys read any cool things this week? We want to kind of stick to the standard. We want to mix it up a little bit. What are we doing here?
Let's do our short stacks, and then we'll get into some questions for each other, and then we'll.
I mean, it's our 100th episode. We might as well keep it 100.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
100 with a T.
100. I'm gonna borrow from Jason Woodage on that one.
All right.
100. Well, Craig, let's why don't you go ahead and drop your short stack on us, man? What'd you read this week?
So I read Coffin Bound #4 by Danny Water and Danny. Dan Water and Danny. I will get it right eventually.
Dan and Danny.
Dan and Danny. And Danny's name is just Danny. There's no last name.
Yeah.
Matt, are you reading this book?
No, I know. I've been told I should.
You need to pick this book up. You will love it. They were rolling around without their skin on, wrestling in a strip club. Yeah, it was interesting. That's just a thing that happens in this book. Just so.
Skinless stripping?
Yeah, skinless strip.
I feel like
it's a strip club where they remove their skin. It's interesting.
Sounds slippery.
I feel like at that point you've taken it a bridge too far. You should you're out of things. You're done. The song is over.
Yeah, and within context of the story, it really works. Don't let that little weird freakiness freak you out, because I mean, there's also a companion that's a vulture on a man's body with a bird cage over its head. So, there's some weird shit happening in this book. So, the other one I read was Count Crowley #2, David Dasmalkian, Lucas Kittner, and Lauren Affey. I talked about the first issue as one of my books of the week, and it's still just a super fun, non-take yourself seriously type of book. Last issue was a werewolf. This issue was a zombie / Frankenstein type monster. So every issue has something going on. So
Yeah.
And then I read Deadly Class number 41 by Rick Remender and Wesley Craig. That book just is still killing it. Just there's 41 issues in. I don't know what to say that you know.
Is that wrapping up soon?
I don't think so.
Is it not? Is it one of those that's going to keep going? So I thought I'd heard somewhere that
I thought it was.
ending.
Yeah,
Maybe it is. I mean, it's potentially could end at any story arc. I mean, it's one of those books that could end or keep going because you can just, unless he kills everybody in the book, that's the only way that you would potentially have an ending, but
That'd
like
be
a
an ending.
definitive ending because it could go on with any of the side characters or whatever. So, but knowing Rick Remender, he'll kill them all.
That tracks.
Yeah,
That sounds about. I mean, do we really need an ending? Just do like a lot of other people do, and just don't give us one. Just
I mean, that happens quite a bit, which was kind of the interesting thing about Coffin Bound. I'll let you guys go next, but it was almost, I want to say it was almost 40 pages for $5 for this issue. It was the last one in the story arc. So I'm hoping that they didn't do that because they were scared of readership and not having enough to continue the story and wanted to get it finished or whatever. But it was I just kept going on, and I'm like, man, this is a thick book. So thick? Yeah.
that's never going to get old. I'm going to be like 75 going, ooh, she thick, and never going to be like, dude, you're gay. Just going to be like, I know, but I get to say that. So I didn't get, normally I don't like to do with my short stacks, I don't like to do just new books that have all came out like this week. I try to mix it up a little bit, get a little diverse readership, and go back into read some older stuff, pull some stuff out of short boxes and whatnot. I didn't have time to this week, number one, because 100th episode, we got a lot going on. Also leaning into finals. That's just my low-key way of reminding you all that I'm in law school and it's hell. So I only got to read new stuff this week, but I read some dope new books. And one of them, the first one, I'll break into that one, Olympia #1 by Tony and Kurt Pyers, Alex Diodo on the art duties on that one. If you are into the work of guys that are on like the cartoonist kayfabe channel, Tom Scioli, if you're into like Michelle Fife, you're gonna dig this book because it's Alex Diodo is one of those guys. He is in love with the work that Jack Kirby did, but he also isn't like I don't know how old he is, but he's a 90s guy. So he's taking these I think that Scioli is a good reference on that because he called it, I saw him talking about the book and he called it toyetic. So it looks like he's drawing action figures. It's this very and so it was super cool. It's about this kid who kind of dreams his heroes in life. You should go check that book out if you didn't. It's a lot of fun. Lots of fun. And then I jumped over and read a book called Family Tree #1 by Jeff Lemire and Phil Hester. Solidly fun book. I love Phil Hester's art.
Yeah, Jeff Lemire, if he fell off, he's back on it.
Yeah, this was in your short stack last week?
Was,
it not? Yeah, I just hadn't made it to it yet, and dude,
yeah, it was really solid.
Just incredibly good. And then new book out this week. We're getting close to the end here, and I'm going to ride this horse into the desert. Batman '83, Tom King, Mikhail Janin, Jordi Belair. I love this. I love what they've done. I'm loving getting to the end of the story. I think what they're doing with, I know you guys don't agree, but
Greg
you're wrong.
is staring me down.
I'm twitching over here.
I love what they're doing with
I'm glad you love it.
Yeah, man. Like with Psycho Pirate, like the little nuances that are in there. You're quoting from like Tennyson in a Batman book. That's dope. Like it's the hotness. I'm all about it. I think it's a great run. I'll stand. I know in this little circle of friends, I'm a lonely man on a lonely island, but I think it's brilliant.
I mean, overall, I'm going to say the story was pretty good. I'm kind of glad for issue 85 to come. To be honest,
I think Tom his writing is brilliant, and I love what he's doing with this.
Yeah. I mean, I'll.
You love that I love it? Yeah, you love that I love it.
I'll let you have your thing. I didn't hate it. So there's that.
Follow that, Matt. You did what did you not hate this week?
Well, I didn't hate DC's Black Label Batman The White Knight Presents Von Freeze by Sean Murphy, Klaus Janson, and Matt Hollingsworth. However, I didn't really like it either.
Yeah.
And I think this is more of like a personal hang up with me because I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with the quality of the work. But man, I couldn't get over. Once again, we have to tie a villain to Bruce Wayne's family. We're doing that now again. Jesus fucking Christ! Can we stop doing that? So yeah, I was not crazy about this story, and that really, if that little part hadn't have been in there, I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Whatever. Also, I read Farmhand number 11 by Image Comics, Rob Guillory and Taylor Wells.
Yeah, I read that too. Very, very.
Yeah, it's kick-ass, man, as the whole series has been. This, reading, Rob Guillory's statement in the back, he says two things. One, he talks about how it is the violence and the action is going to be ratcheted up from here on out. And also he talks about that the AMC television show that's being adapted out of this story is it's active and in development. I can't wait for that, man. This is going to make one weird show.
This is a story that I missed the bus on, and I regret it so much because when I hear you guys talk about it, it sounds just dynamic, energetic, and just a lot of fun.
It's a horror story in this cartoony, and it's just, and the story itself is really imaginative. It's just damn good, and it's going to make a weird, hellacious show that I think people are going to be compelled to because of its uniqueness.
Okay.
It's become very clear that Rob Guillory and John Layman,
the Mighty Layman.
Yeah, now you got more editing to do.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's become very evident that they were equal creators in Chew. By the way this is going, this
sure feels that way.
Yeah, they.
Well, and I made this statement back when we talked about Chew, is that if you take Rob Guillory out of the equation of that series, it diminishes that series being by huge amounts.
Yeah.
Huge amounts.
I mean, that shouldn't be a surprise, though. So with comics, it's a medium that the artist has just as much authority in telling the story as the writer does.
Well, and what I mean by that, this is an extra special example of that, in my opinion, because of the nature of Chew in and of itself is a crime horror story. And if you had another great artist that wasn't illustrating it in the dynamic, cartoony style that Guillory does, changes the entire dynamic. You could still have delivered great panels, but if you're doing, if you're any other given artist, it's just going to change the entire tone of the story.
Style matters.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. What I mean by that is, he added a level of uniqueness to the story that a lot of other people couldn't have brought to it, simply for style choices.
Yeah, I mean, look at stories like Bone. Go back to that stuff.
Yeah.
You could write Bone with an artist who's extremely detailed, who's got really heavy lines, who is into thatching and stuff like that. The fact that you've got it a very cartoony style does so much for the tone.
Yeah.
That's one of those things I don't think people outside the medium understand. And arguably I don't think people who love comics really understand. I don't think, some people I think are satisfied not to scratch the surface of it and not to wonder about it.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes us different as comics readers, because we're like, oh, look at this.
Well,
look at this shape.
The art tonally changes the book.
Yeah.
So if they, like Matt was saying, if you had a serious artist on that book, or if Rob was just writing Farmhand,
like if you had Rebecca Isaacs illustrating Chew, imagine how different that story would be.
Insanely different.
Yeah.
Also more brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, in the story would be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but the delivery,
the context of the story,
the impact and the delivery would be completely different.
Yeah, put Joe Bennett on that. The guy's doing all the work in Immortal Hulk. That just does so much different work in the story that it's not. And I think those things are important, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. I don't think people realize how dark of a story something like I Hate Fairyland is.
Because of the way it's drawn.
Because of the way it's drawn. They just see this really bubblegum, really happy, really bright, kind of Mad TV-esque Alice in Wonderland world, and they don't understand what's really happening in that story.
Yeah.
And if they do their job well, that's
it's seamless.
Yeah.
It's seamless. And in those, that's why I need to get caught up on Farmhand, because just what you guys are saying about it, it gets me.
I mean, honestly,
it's cool, man.
Anybody out there that read Chew, if you like Chew, you're going to love Farmhand.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's a litmus test for it to know.
Yeah.
Pollo Loco 2020 needs to happen. I just want that. Can we get that show? Can we just get Pollo Loco as his own show?
I mean, I'm fine with that.
So number 3 on the list from Image Comics,
I'm proud of me. I didn't cut you off.
I saw you. It looked like you were about to.
I was doing mathematics in my brain. I'm like, wait a minute.
So I read the deluxe edition, volume 3, 4, and 5 of 100 Bullets that I had on loan from Caleb. This is by Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso. I tore through these in, I don't know, a week and a half or something like that. And this is, so the story in this is very easy to get convoluted because there's so many characters and the motivations are changing. However, it was really enjoyable, and Eduardo Risso's art was amazing in this. Just killer. The panels I enjoyed the most are the ones that had no dialogue, and just his action scenes are very uniquely drawn, very dynamic. This was a great series to read. Again, the art, the delivery of the art on this excelled this story immensely.
I wonder what he's doing these days.
He's doing, the series with Azzarello right now, the Moonshine.
Oh, is that he's on that? Okay, yeah. See, I'm not reading that either.
Well, and it's coming out and not coming out, and
maybe that's why.
Yeah, the delay on it.
That's a werewolf story.
Werewolf Moonshiners.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's Azzarello at his best.
Yeah. Well, 100 Bullets is.
It's at the top of his game. I won't say his best.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. But this 100 Bullets, man, is. Because before this, the best Azzarello I'd read was his Wonder Woman run, which is still amazing to me that he pulled that off so well. I mean, given how he usually writes mainstream characters. But this is crazy good. I mean, this is Azzarello in orbit.
Yeah,
all right.
It's a fast read. As much as is in that book.
Yeah,
it's a fast read. It really is. Like it'll get away from it if you're not on your game as a reader.
Yeah.
So this is a blind spot for me that I intend to correct.
Oh, I got you, boo. I
like the way you put that.
We're gonna fix this. We're gonna write. Hey, I am reading Sandman for you. You read 100 Bullets for me.
I'll do it.
And then we'll make Matt read something else.
I just like the way he said it was a life choice he made years ago, and he's going to get back on the path of righteousness. Is the way he put that.
Well, sometimes there's books that you just miss. As they come around,
everybody does.
And you have to pick them up later. At some point.
It's impossible to read everything, especially right now when there's as many good stories coming out as there are.
There really are.
It's just insane. Hey, on that note,
speaking
of good stories coming out, there's been a lot that's come out this year.
Yeah.
We're very quickly approaching the month of December.
Yeah.
Rumor has it after that, the year is over. Like, I'm not sure if this year's going to be different.
The year and the decade are over.
The year and the decade are going to be over. Oh, we got to add that to the list.
Yeah.
And the list that I'm talking about is our end of the year Southern Fried Geeky.
You just made it harder.
Awards. Yeah. Oh, that's going to be its own category, though. We're not going to go overall. We'll just do its own.
We're not going to do the same categories for 10 years. Okay,
that would break.
Please,
me. That would be between choosing.
I think
can I still just say Immortal Hulk for everything?
Yes. You can. Yeah, that's acceptable.
if that's your answer to everything.
Like asking about my favorite books of the year is asking me to choose between my children. I think if you ask me to choose between the best book of the decade, that's like asking me to choose between my favorite children. Like that goes up. Like I've already singled you two out for being the good ones, and now I have to pick one of you. This is bullshit. But yeah, we've got the end of the year Southern Fried Geekery Awards. I think we had a name for that at one point.
We did.
What it was?
The Golden Geekeries.
Was it the Golden Geekeries or something like that? Yeah,
we'll call it the Golden Geekeries. How about that?
It was silly, but in my in the abundance of spare time that I have, I'm going to put together a list or a form, like a Google form that the folks listening to the show can also throw in their P's and Q's, and we'll compile that, and we'll have like a listener choice forum to also go into with ours.
Yeah, and we'll give the best answer or the most popular answer.
Yeah, and if those answers are wrong, we'll put our own in there.
Yeah.
To make it right, because sometimes y'all are wrong out there.
Well, we'll put the most popular from the fans into it as well.
This is one of my favorite times because number one, I love lists. I get to use my spreadsheets.
You love lisps or lists?
But all of the above. True.
Lips, lists, and lips.
I don't know what's wrong with my mouth today. Like I can't get words out. I think I'm still drunk from last night.
Fair.
Very possibly. But no, dude, I love lists. I get out all my spreadsheets, get to do my homework. I'm really excited about this. Yeah,
no
dude,
one should love spreadsheets.
They're glorious.
Spreadsheets are a thing that you have to deal with.
Are glorious.
I've met these people, man. It's weird.
I mean, they have a function and they're useful. There's no doubt about it. But yeah,
especially when you have to remember like a year's worth of comics. I still have my spreadsheets from 2016 and 2017 too. So
I tried to do a spreadsheet. It became too much like homework to keep track of my books as I read them.
They're the good.
No,
I'm about it. So guys, 100 episodes.
100.
We did it. We are sitting here this morning. We have accomplished a feat that many in their lifetime will never accomplish. Many have tried. Many have failed. We walked a
I feel like
road
Superman now.
of broken
Stronger
bodies.
than the rest.
We stepped over that like they were just crawling for the goal. They didn't
Behold
make it.
our trail of dead.
Just we've done a lot.
Climbed the mountain and face Crom.
Oh, dude, that book was amazing. Speaking of good books, we've accomplished a lot with this show. We have proved to ourselves that we could do it. We proved to a lot of other people who I don't think thought we could do it that we could. We have gotten, I would argue, better in the way that we talk about comics and the way that we view comics. We have interviewed some incredible creators.
Yes, we have.
Over the almost 2 years now. But where do we go from here? Like, that's something that I think we, as a group, like, I'm curious to what you guys, and since this is 100th episode, we're going to keep it 100, right? So where do you guys see us going from here? What do you think, what do you want to see come out of the show?
So for me, I've really been thinking about this since I saw the questions. And for me, if you look at our show, we've never done extreme changes at once. We've made some minor changes, tweaks to our format, and I foresee us doing that the same way because it's worked for us. And if you look at where we are at now versus where we were at episode 1, it's leaps and bounds different. And I would like to believe better.
Oh,
totally. We've cut content that wasn't working for us, added content that we thought would work better, and I feel like those changes have made. So to sit here and look into a crystal ball and see what those changes will continue to be, I don't know. It's going to be a feel, hey, this just isn't cutting it. We're going to cut it out, and we're going to put something else in its place. And that seems to be the format that's working for us. And as always, I invite our listeners to give us feedback. If there's something that they would like to see that or hear that we're not doing, reach out to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And we have an email address that they can do that on. It's southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com, just to throw that one in there. Well, Matt, what about you? So how many episodes have you been on now?
'Cause 25, 26.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've been on it for a hot minute now, and you've brought just a shit ton to the table. So as somebody who's the newest one at the table, also a person that, like, I consider you one of the most intelligent people I know. We've been friends for years, so I'm very curious about what you want to see come out of this, or like where you see it going.
I mean, as long as it stays fun and interesting. I mean, that's the two things that I just think we need to stick to: fun and interesting, and finding ways to keep it as such. And I've brought this up before. Some variability, just some random variability, like I've recommended our chaos episode. Right. That scared the shit out of you.
It still makes me nervous. Yeah, that's kind of what this is, though, right?
Yeah. So this kind of stuff, I think that would be really fun to throw one of those out there every once in a while. But that's the only input I have for adjustments, I guess I would say, because people that are looking for a show, I would assume in most cases are looking for ideas on what they should be reading,
right?
Mostly. So, what I feel like we do really well is talk about new books that are out, and old books that people can dig up and enjoy as well, and telling them where to get those. That's the kind of stuff that I really look for when I'm reading interviews or listening to interviews. I want to walk away from it with an idea of why I should read something or that's going on or that I missed from years past.
Yeah, either from our enthusiasm of talking about the book or that we just told you something in the book that caught your attention. We hope I mean, our goal is to get more people reading comics,
Right.
Preferably, or reading better comics, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I dropped off. I was buying comics for years and years, and I dropped off in the early 2000s because I was in 90s comics burnout.
Yeah.
And if I'd have had somebody telling me what I should have been reading instead of what I was, I never would have dropped off. But I didn't know I should have been reading Garth Ennis's Punisher that was coming out in the early 2000s. I didn't know I should have been reading Batman Hush. I dropped off when all these awesome books were coming out because I didn't know about them.
Well, and I think part of that too is even beyond that, and the books you just listed are big two books, but I think a lot of people who do drop out, they drop out because they're reading the same stories over and over again from the big two. And that's one of the things I love about the podcast that I listen to. And I think we try to bring that to the table here is you open up to a whole new world of other comics.
Yep.
Like that's why I try to do Boom Studios books and I try to do indie books. And I know you guys do as well, because there's so much out there that is not getting read just because it doesn't have the M or the D on it.
Well,
or the image now.
People tend to find the Marvel and the DC books, not always, and we do try to address a fair mix of all different books. But yeah, I mean, I think we try to focus on some of the creator-owned independent comics. And
I always make it a point to.
Yeah.
Try and get people's awareness of those books out there, because
especially for like the new number ones.
Yeah.
Well, and the variability of it, it'd be real easy to come on here and talk about a superhero book every week. And I always try to make it a point to find one that is not, here's a street level, no powers crime book, or here's a, Second Coming by Mark Russell and Richard Pace. I mean, these things that are wildly different than the classic superhero stories.
Right.
I mean, and that's a good question. It's not on our list, but it's a good question. How do you choose your book of the week?
How do I?
Yeah.
I
mean, he just answered. I'll give my answer here in a second.
Okay. So for me, if I'm reading a new book that I'm going through, and sometimes I will just pick it because it's a new number one and it's got a big name. I'm not gonna lie, I'll be shameless right now. Sometimes I pick a book because I know if I tag the creator on Twitter, they're gonna share it, and I think that brings some attention to our show. But I never do that if I didn't like the book. So I'm not gonna talk about the book if I didn't like it. Other times, if a book speaks to me or makes me feel a certain way, if it pulls an emotion out of me, if a book makes me feel like a child again when I'm reading it, because on some level I think there's value in that, especially in this form, in this medium, I'll pick that one. So there's a number of things. Like I said, it depends on the week and it depends on my mood. Sometimes if I'm reading a book and it's just a new arc to a first issue, or even if I didn't enjoy it as much, but it does something that I think was narratively interesting, I'll pick that. So it's hard to say particularly why, because there's different reasons based on different books.
Well, and I think that's a fair assessment. I usually pick the book that I had the most fun reading that week.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, but I also want it to be one that is either the start of the story arc, the end of the story arc, a number one, that sort of thing, to a good jumping on place for somebody, or a reason, hey, this, you can pick up this whole arc now and read through this part.
Right.
So, again, trying to get information out to our listeners.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking about this, the next 100 episodes, and what I would like to see out of it. And I had a hard time with this because I kept coming back to, specifically for this podcast, I would like to grow the number of people who are listening to this podcast. Because, I mean, it's no secret around here that, Craig, you're the one who kind of bankrolls making sure we've got the airwaves and the space to put this out there in the world. And so I would like to, I look at those numbers as getting the biggest bang for your buck. And so I would love to grow the listenership. In saying that, though, I am not willing, or I don't want to grow the listenership at the expense of talking about things that we love. Like we've had some people from the Facebook group suggest that we talk about, why don't you guys do a book episode about books you don't like? And that breaks our 50-50 rule that we have. So I don't want to do it at the expense of that.
You're never going to hear us do a negative, hey, let's get on here and bash books.
No.
That's not who any of the... There's times when we just don't like a book that we read.
Right.
Or that we disagree on the quality of a book, or just where the story's going on a book. But I'm never going to get on here and just blatantly bash a book.
But even beyond that, like people have suggested that we don't do as long of episodes, and I'm not like, I don't want to do that either. This is my favorite time of the week. At the end of the day, I think when Craig and I we started the show, and I know Matt agrees that at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if 2 people are listening or 200,000 people are listening. Obviously, that makes a big difference on what we're able to do with it, but we like to just sit around and talk because we're friends, to talk about our books. And so I like that aspect of it. But I obviously, we want to grow the listenership, but I don't want to change the level of communication back and forth that we're giving to each other, because at the end of the day, this is a conversation between 3 friends listening at a table or speaking at a table that we invite a lot of other people to listen to. And I don't want to lose that aspect of it. And I don't want to, like other people have said, hey, why don't you guys do once a month? You talk about TV shows and stuff like that. And I think doing that, part of I think where that comes from and people forget is that we're not here to talk about a genre. Like, we're not here to talk about superhero television. Like, we might mention how much we love The Mandalorian and all of that stuff, or what's going on with the DC television shows.
Go watch Mandalorian.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. But I think what we enjoy about it is the actual medium of comics, like the written word on a page juxtaposed with pictures that tell a story. And at the end of the day, I don't give a shit about what's in the theaters. I like reading my comics. I don't give a shit about what's on TV. I like reading my comics. So I don't want to morph this. Like, I'm not willing to morph it into that for a few extra listeners that just want to watch TV.
Well, okay, so I do care about what's happening in the theaters, and I care about what's on the TV, but at the heart of our podcast, we are a comic book podcast, and we've always been that. Maybe originally we were more geek-centric than just comic-centric, but we are a comic-centric podcast now. And that is what we're going to talk about on this show, is comics or manga or things related to that medium. So yes, occasionally we're going to talk about a movie. We've done specials where we talked about movies before, and we'll do it again if they're impactful movies that need to be talked about. It's just in television, same thing. If there's something we need to talk about, we'll talk about it. But at the heart of what we are, we're a comics podcast, and that's what we're going to remain.
Yeah. And all those things, movies, television shows, comic books are the foundation for all of those things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and that's frankly, to make it a point to talk about, any given television show or any given movie, and very rarely do those things need help.
Exactly.
or would promotion benefit them
right.
Greatly. Meanwhile, the comic books industry, how limited it is as far as people's exposure to it. I just feel like we're serving the industry better by doing so. And I like it doing it better anyway.
I do too. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at saying is they don't need our help on that. Yeah. And maybe if more people are going to go to the movies and go to comic shops and read these books. More people are going to watch it on TV than at the end of the day, because it takes more effort to read. I mean, that's the true of any type of reading that you're going to do. Could that draw more people? Yeah, maybe. But I don't
think so.
I don't necessarily want that. Like, I want to talk about my funny books. I want to talk about my comics and put it out there for people to listen to who want to read the comics. Like, that's what I think over time it's going to be a slow grind, but I do think if we keep doing what we've been doing, we make some tweaks here and there, then we're going to build a bigger listenership. And that's good for us, and that's good for the show, but that's good for the comic industry.
Well, and I want to be clear, our listenership's not low.
No, it's not. No.
It's not 11 o'clock comics numbers, but it's not. We're doing fine. I don't even look at the numbers anymore, to be honest. I don't care. I don't care how many people are listening. I'm going to do this. We're going to sit here and we're going to do the show the 3 of us want to do.
Yeah.
And that's a comic book. That doesn't mean we're not open to suggestions, but it's a comic-centric podcast.
Yeah.
In formats that revolve around comics is what we're going to do. So, again, there's going to be movies we're going to have specials about and talk about. I guarantee you there will be. We just did one not long ago for the Joker.
Right.
It's going to happen. There will be a television show that we're going to talk about. We probably should talk about The Mandalorian at some point.
I'm surprised we haven't yet.
I mean, there's going to be things that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Just because it's part of what we are.
Yeah.
But it's not going to ever be the focus of this show. It's just not.
I don't think it should be. Like I said, there's enough of that in other places.
You can find those podcasts out there, and you should if that's your interest. You absolutely should. But if your interest is comic books and wanting to know what good books to read, this is the podcast for you, because none of us are professional critics. None of us are professional reviewers sitting at this table.
Well, speak for yourself.
But we have yet to get paid for what we're doing. So once we start getting paid, then
I found a 20 on the sidewalk one day. Like, I'd like to think that the universe did that for us.
But we do have a lot of fun telling you the books that we like to read.
We really do.
Yeah.
And hopefully that excitement comes through to you guys and it makes you want to go buy those books. Mm-hmm. And that's the goal.
Yep.
And in doing that, like, come to our Facebook. Here's where I do care about, like, building the listenership, is because it does bring, if you listen to this show and you are so inclined to do so, come to the Facebook group or come to the Twitter page or whatever and jump in the conversation that way. That's why I care about, like, growing a listenership, because it does bring more voices to those spaces, which inevitably feeds back into the show. Mm-hmm. Because it goes, I think, a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. How do we pick our books? I would love it, and maybe this is part of the suggestion behind the Chaos episode, and maybe we need to give Matt, like, an audible power of override, where 1 week he, like, gets to, every certain amount of time, gets to, like, throw an audible out there for us. Mm-hmm. I would like to be able to get out of my comfort zone more, because that's something I struggle with. And that's something I do like. Like, Matt makes us read books that are more perhaps hyper violent than what I would read, and I think maybe we get Matt to read some books that are more emotive or emotionally driven than what he would read. The fact that we get Craig to read something that's not Star Wars, is a miracle.
That's not true.
I know. I'm just shitting with you.
I read a lot of comic books.
You really do.
The goal, again, is just for us to have fun presenting comics to you guys in whatever format that is. Right now, this is the format that's working for us. We'll continue to tweak it. We'll continue to make adjustments. I'm all for 1 episode a month or something being a sit down and let's just chat what we're talking about. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's coming.
Matt's given that, like, I can see the wheels turning in Matt's eyes.
Yes.
There's always going to be tweaks and changes to the show, and there's always going to be fun things we're going to try and add. And if things aren't working, we'll toss them to the side.
Yeah.
And we know they're not working by your guys' responses.
That's true. Yeah.
They're honestly, your guys' involvement in our social media on Facebook lets us know what to cut, what not to cut, whether you know it or not.
Right.
It does.
Yeah.
And, if you want to talk about movies and superhero television shows, and social media is a perfect place to take that, because we will absolutely engage you in those conversations there.
Mm-hmm. Well, Matt won't.
Yeah.
We're gonna convert him to. It was funny. He posted something on our Facebook page, and Lily Guy sends me a text, and she says, "Is Matt on Facebook now?" I said, "Well, I mean, he's got an account.
Baby steps.
Yeah,
baby steps." Well, one of y'all drop a question. What you got for us?
I have to put on my glasses.
Uh-oh. He's getting studious, y'all.
Yeah, so comics. Why is this guy always fucking falling? What is the industry doing to bring this sort of, is it just fandom in general, you guys?
So my response to this question is that it isn't.
I agree.
What we're hearing are whiners and miserable people just wailing.
Yeah.
And they're going to do that. They're going to find something to complain and wail about in their lives, and saying that the comic book industry is failing is just one of those things they're going to do. There's a market and an audience for comic books. So comic books are going to be around for that.
Yeah.
See drugs. It's going to be here. People want it. It's going to be here in some fashion. There may be radical adjustments because of whatever, but the comics are not going away.
So I think I agree with that for the most part. You're right. No, they're never going away. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than just having people who are whining and complaining. I think there's two factions. Now, yes, there is a business, like you said. I thought you're going somewhere that you didn't go. There is a business for the whining and complaining. There is a market for that, and I think some people like that, and so it feeds into it. I do think that there's something to be said for an honest response that something in the comic industry is not working. But that's a very focused part of the industry. We're sitting in a comic book shop right now. I used to work Sundays in it, and the number of times we'd get people walk by who have lived in this area their entire life, who never knew this was here, didn't even know they made comic books anymore. They were going to the arcade that's next door, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't even know they did these things anymore." I think the direct market, the sky may actually be falling on the direct market. I think it's slower than what people are assuming. I think some people see it as like in the last stages or something. I don't think it's that. I think local comic shops are having to adjust and improvise, and they're having to open their doors more to just comics. They're having to seek a wider audience. They're having to find ways to advertise in their communities to let people know that these things are still here. I think the direct market did itself a major disservice when it limited comic books to just being beyond the doors of a local comic shop.
No, that's definitely true.
Yeah, and that did affect the market. But that being said, the market is much larger than just the things that are coming out of Diamond. Like you're seeing stuff like TKO right now, which is a publisher that they're not pushing their stuff through Diamond. You have to order them from the website, or you have to order them from other retailers. You see stuff that only comes through places like Barnes & Noble or actual quote-unquote bookstores that aren't comic book stores. The online market, like comics that are strictly digital, Comixology, Webtoon, stuff like that. Crowdfunding. It's booming. It is a booming industry. So, like, the comic industry is not dying. But what people are reacting to are they always react to the numbers behind Marvel and DC. Arguably maybe Image, but Image has a much smaller market share. And we hear a lot of it, I think, because we do sit inside the walls of a comic shop. Like, we get to hear our buddy Matt, who owns the store. We get to hear his issues and his problems, and when he gets scared because he's a small business owner.
The other Matt.
Yeah, not this one. The one with, like, red hair and not no hair. That sound you just heard was Matt punching me. We get to he does talk to us about how sometimes when he's worried when his numbers are not good, and he starts looking for
concerns
reasons.
are legit.
He's a business owner.
Yeah.
So that, like, we get that part of it, but the other side from our perspective as just fans, just people who read comics, no, the sky's not falling. It's just shifting. Like, there's a big, like, technology and the market and everything has grown beyond what we know it to be.
I think that what's happening is the same shift that happened with music in the 90s.
Okay.
With, peer-to-peer platforms with music and it going digitally. I think you're seeing the same shift now. Mm-hmm. You're always going to be able to, as long as you can find a place that sells them, you're always going to be able to get the books in your hand. Mm-hmm. But eventually, it's moving towards a digital. It's moving towards other ways of consuming, trade paperbacks, that sort of thing. It takes a lot of room to collect comics and to store your comics. It takes up space. A lot of people read novels. They buy the novel, they read it, and if they didn't buy the hardback, they take it and they trade it in for another book, or sell it to a used bookstore or something of that nature. Sell them at yard sales, whatever. They don't. I don't.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't. I have piles of paperback books that drive my wife crazy.
But people do. People that collect comics.
Yeah,
they're not collecting them in necessarily turn. I mean, we've all at some point or in our lives have traded in comic books for store credit to get other comic books, that sort of thing.
No, I don't do that either.
But you have to make a commitment to this hobby, I'll call it.
So do you guys do that? Here's my question on that. Why? Because I do it. I've got close to 20 long boxes in my comic room.
Because I might want to read it again someday.
Well, so I think that's what I'm asking. Let's keep it 100. Let's be honest. Do we do that because we actually are going to read anything we put in those long boxes?
I'm never going to read them again. They're sitting in storage.
Or are we doing that because we think that they're going to be worth money one day?
Both.
I
mean, for me personally,
yeah.
I'm also, I'd like to have the world record.
Yeah.
But, we're talking years and years away from that. And assuming somebody else quits collecting comics between now and then.
Yeah. Out here trying to be Bob Retail.
Yeah.
So I want to step back to the comic, the failing question.
Yeah.
So what I want to make clear, my point is comic books themselves are not failing.
No, for sure.
The way that they are put out to the public is definitely got some things that could be improved upon. And I've said this for years. Put a spinner rack back in a grocery store and a pharmacy, and those things will freaking sell.
Well, and it's weird because manga sells in a way that comics don't. Like if you look at the numbers, and over here it's mainly just Shonen Jump shit. But and I say shit like that's just my personal opinion. For those of you who love Shonen Jump things, don't at me. I've said I'm on the record. Y'all know how I feel about that stuff. I just it's not for me. That's fine. But that stuff sells bananas. Like kids know what One Piece is and what the My Hero Academy thing is, or like that stuff.
My Hero Academia.
Yeah, that.
Well, I mean that all started from Dragon Ball Z. I don't know. I'm not the expert when it comes to manga, but there's a lot of people that grew up in the 90s with Dragon Ball Z that are now comics needs that again.
Yeah.
Where manga has succeeded, where comics is failing is giving kids an avenue to consume their product. Comics doesn't have that avenue right now. So, I mean, they do. There's kids' books.
Yeah.
But they're not being promoted anywhere.
Yeah, and they're not made, like comics in general aren't made for kids. And I don't know that they necessarily need to be.
They don't, but you need some comics.
Yeah, well,
kids.
the industry needs it to keep itself fed.
Right,
I always use this as an example. Britney Spears has sold more albums than Metallica has.
Yeah.
The marketability to kids will feed the industry overall. And make more things available to an older audience.
Well, but young comic book readers become adult comic book readers.
Yeah.
And, I mean, to compare it to another industry, which is a horrible industry. Cigarettes. They market to kids for a freaking reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if a kid starts smoking as a teenager, they're likely to smoke it as an adult.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we've done things and put laws into place, like you can't have Camel as a mascot. You can't have cartoonish characters as your mascots anymore. But my point being is, if you want a viable future, you got to market to your future audience.
Well, I think that's where Scholastic comes in. Scholastic does an amazing job. Like people, we hear it here all the time, and I think a lot of it comes from people who want it to fail because of the subject matter, because quote unquote toxic fandom, which is not quote unquote, it's just toxic fandom. But people love to talk about Squirrel Girl. Well, how does Squirrel Girl do all this and its numbers, and it's only because it's going through Scholastic? Look,
who cares why it's doing it?
What an asinine statement that would be.
Well, and they're using it
They
to try
make
to
it,
they're using it to try to serve it up as an excuse. Like, oh well, it's only because Scholastic's buying so many of these at one time and then spreading out. No, those things sell. Like they're
not buying that many if they're not selling.
Kids are eating those things up. Library, or they'll make that excuse. Well, it's just because libraries are buying it. Yeah, okay, cool.
They're buying it because
That's
kids are checking
wonderful.
it
Yeah,
out.
Yes.
kids are getting it and they
Idiots.
want it. And it's again, I think it's looking for an excuse.
It's so stupid.
It doesn't affect the local comic book store, so it's not helping the industry is
Right.
the mentality. No, it's helping the future of the industry because potentially those kids are going to still be reading in the future.
Well, and there's a side to that too that invites more than just the boys club into comics, and the big two do adjust to that. So I mean, we all had that experience over the last couple of years where the big two was trying to move in a more kid friendly or more diverse goal, or more bringing in more people, and some people in the comic stores did not react well to that because growly tummies did not react well to that because it brought people who weren't them into the store and they didn't like it. It fucked up the boys club, so to speak. We were having that conversation earlier about some other folks that they won't say it in front of the people when they're sitting right there, but it really does. It feels like an intrusion into quote unquote their club, and at the end of the day, it's not their club.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I sit in this comic book store every Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Every Wednesdays, I'm in here from opening till about 3:30, 4 o'clock. And what I love to see is there's a lot of 20-something-year-olds coming in and buying comics. So to me, that shows that the market's still expanding. Otherwise, it would be all 30-year-olds at this point.
Yeah.
It would be 90s kids and older that are buying comics. It's not. There's new market out there. part of that is directly related, in my opinion, to the success of the movies.
I think so. And I think that's going to help over time. It just hasn't, I don't think they've been able to capitalize on it.
Well, what you don't see is people coming in, and we can move on to the next question, but you don't see people coming in and just buying what they saw on the movie. They come in and buy different comics. So anyways.
No, I think that's all true. So I think what we need to decide, Craig, is do we want to give Matt chaos powers?
Quite possibly.
Do we want to do that?
Maybe.
I'm terrified of this idea.
Oh my God, I can feel it coursing through me.
I think we maybe do. I think there's a segment of our show that we could cut and do it.
Sweet.
I'm terrified of this, but
Well, I mean, when we say chaos powers, it'll be chaos with a format.
yeah.
Oh,
I mean, we'll have some sort of format. So otherwise, Caleb will sit over there and twitch.
put a leash on me.
Well, all right. I think that's almost pretty much what we've got. Unless you want to keep going. We ready to?
We can roll a little longer.
You want to roll a little bit longer?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll
Let's
do
go
it.
a little over.
Well,
I mean, unless you just want to.
Matt, you drop one on us. What do you got?
No, I'm not ready.
Chaos powers, right here, right now. See, you're wasting it.
Okay. Well, let me ask one. So here's one of mine.
Nope, it's too late. It's moving on.
Oh!
You had your chaos window. It's
man.
over now. It's closed.
This Southern Fried Geekery train just never slows down. So, given that the comic book market has evolved over the last several decades, what are some things you miss about days past? And I put in parentheses, Mark Russell be damned.
Oh,
Because of his nostalgia, his negativity of nostalgia. It always makes me feel like an asshole. Every time I get nostalgia, I'm like, Mark Russell wouldn't like this.
I really miss when they didn't saturate our comics with politics.
You said that with a straight
I did.
face.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know that there's really anything that. Yeah, tell you what, there is, but it's not anything within the pages. I miss when they didn't restart it all the time. I miss when my books got up to in the 300s. You know, when I was waiting on Avengers, 4 whatever, or Incredible Hulk number 400, this, that, or the other. I don't like the reboots all the time, and I get that's why they do it. But as far as the quality in the books, I think the writing is better now than it's ever been.
Absolutely.
And look, I love the
And
old
the
heads,
art.
man. I love the old heads. That's
Yeah.
not knocking them. We picked up a Zorro book this past week just because of the Alex Toth art. I love it. I still love Stan Lee. Like, I love Roy Thomas. I love all of those things. But you can't sit, but you can appreciate those things for what they are, and they're written of a time. But the writing now is way better. The science behind the craft is way better, and that's true of the art as well. I think it's more evolved. We're getting a larger swath of. I think Bill Sienkiewicz really busted open the door to see more abstract work being done in comics. Even though I think the man is insane and kind of an asshole, Dave Sim did more to spur on the comics industry and the level of artistry that you're seeing in it. So that would be the only thing. It's really the formatting and the outside the book stuff that I'm nostalgic about. Inside of it, I think we're getting just as good, if not better, stories than we ever have, in my personal opinion. There's more available. Like, there's more, like, maybe we have gotten back to a day that there wasn't just capes and tights, and that was all of what comics was after the Comics Code Authority shut that shit down. We're getting back to westerns and romances and just a little bit of everything.
You don't see many westerns because people don't like to draw horses.
That's true. It's hard. Yeah. Nay, they say.
Nay.
When it comes to drawing westerns, they say nay.
I agree 100% with you. I would say that as far as creativity, we're in the golden age of comic books right now.
Yeah.
We're living in the best age of comic books right now as far as creativity. Obviously the time is set up differently. The golden age happened in the 40s.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a longing for the past. I respect the past in comics. Again, going back to my analogy for this show, that was the rocket ship that got us to where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, you can't build a house on the sand. Like, you have to have a good foundation, and we have that.
And all of that stuff is fantastic. I go back and read old comics. Hell, I just bought the Alan Moore Swamp Thing run.
Okay.
So
That's a good segue.
Yeah, so I'm gonna sit down and read that because I do love a lot of the older stuff, the '80s stuff. Once you get before the '80s, and don't get me wrong, I love old Spider-Man. It's not easy to read.
No,
it's not. It's fun, and it's good stories, but it's not necessarily easy to read. It's beautiful to look at.
It was easy to read for most of us at the time when we were at the appropriate age it was written for.
Yeah.
I mean, it was written for a different age. Yeah.
Well, so I recently, I think last year I went back and I read the first 40 issues of The Amazing Spider-Man. Like I've got the first omnibus. And again, the way that it's written is way different. Like the way that
They describe everything.
the exposition was that went through that book when Ditko and Lee, and you saw a little bit of that, and I'll post some pictures from the Alex Toad Zorro book. Like the way that it was formatted, you've got your panels and your word balloons in the panel, but the narrative and the exposition is done in between the panels.
Yeah.
That was cool to see, but I really don't miss that.
Yeah.
I don't miss it at all, and I'll be honest. If I go back and I read, and this is my suggestion to anyone, you want to go back and read old comics, ignore all the words that are not in word balloons, because what they're describing in there is being told in the art. But for some reason, they felt they needed to tell it and show it.
Well, again, I think part of that was because comics at the time was a relatively new medium.
They were finding their feet.
Yeah, we've done some digging in this before. I was not prepared to talk about this, so again, terrible with names. But you look at the guy who wrote The Phantom. You look at and I did a report on him in undergrad, and I forget what his name is. Shame on me. But you look at the way comic strips work and the way that they've evolved. They really just started in the late 1800s. That was when they first appeared. And so when they really took off, when Marvel became Marvel and in the post-World War II era, was really when somebody lit the fuse on quote-unquote comics. And it was still a relatively new medium. And so they were figuring it out very fast-paced, very quickly. And you look at how they've evolved since 1960 to 2019, it's insane how much different, and yet how they're still fundamentally the same.
Exactly. I mean, and again, it's a solid foundation, and there's a lot of good in those old stories. Yeah. But I prefer what we're reading right now.
I miss the price tag.
And related to that, I'd say what I would like. It would, and I know this will never happen. I would appreciate newsprint again. Give me a news. In a prestige format, I really dig, and doing those for special things are nice. But your regular run-of-the-mill comic book, give me the standard newsprint format. I really like going back and reading old books that are in that format.
Do you ever pick up any of the Alterna comics?
I used to.
Yeah, I used to as well. And then Peter Cementi put his foot in his mouth. But maybe I'm getting to the point where I can forgive him for that, because I've thought about going and checking in to seeing what's there more. And I think the industry has largely corrected that. So, we're going to keep it 100. Peter Cementi, when the whole comics gate, he was really, I think he bought into the idea that there was a secret minority or majority of people who were buying comics that were being quiet. And so he kind of catered a little bit to some loudmouth assholes online. And then he tried to come out and put forth that anybody who he published comics for had to, and these were work for hire people. These were not employees of his. These were people who just yes, I will sign this contract and work for you. He tried to mandate how they ran their social media pages and wouldn't let them run block bots and stuff to just get rid of the assholes. Because lo and behold, it always seemed like all of these douchebags that were trolling them online all filtered through one or two places. So they blocked those through a block bot, and it got rid of everybody. So they tried to mandate that, and it did. I think it backfired on them. It didn't work. It pissed off a lot of people, ran off a lot of good talent who will never go back to him, and ran off a lot of readers. I think maybe I'm getting to the place where I can go back and pick up Alterna comics without feeling bad again. So maybe I'll do that. They're $1.25. They do a lot of newsprint. And there's a lot of good new creators who are coming into that world who don't have anything to do with the side of all the noise in the background per se. They're just,
for me,
folks
it has
trying
to do
get
with the
published.
content of the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if I know somebody is a trash human being, regardless of the content, I'm not going to buy their book.
Yeah.
So, but that's just me.
I mean, you're friends with me, and I'm kind of garbage.
So yeah.
So you mentioned Alan Moore a while ago. There are people who would make the argument that Alan Moore is the greatest living comics creator of all time, even though he doesn't create comics anymore. Let's talk about GOATs. I'm curious about this, and we've done this before, but I don't think we've ever done it with Matt. Who would you guys, of course, GOAT being an acronym for greatest of all time, who would you guys consider to be, and this could be alive or dead, comics GOATs?
For me, writers, it's Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
Artists, it's always going to be Kirby and John Romita Sr., John Byrne.
John Byrne?
Yeah.
Okay.
Michael Golden is one of them.
Really?
Yeah, I think Michael, if you go back and look at some of his, especially his earlier stuff, he to me is one of the greatest. I mean, that's a short list off the top of my head.
Well, coming up with the greatest of all times for me is just I just can't do it.
Maybe we should do our FOTS favorites of all time.
But and I know that's what you mean. I mean, who are mine? It's just so I appreciate so many different creators for so many different reasons. But I have to, basically going back to you can't build a house on sand. Kirby, for what he did for the medium and just his amazing output, what Stan Lee obviously did for the industry, all the people that founded the industry, I tend to think of first, and then those that made the most dramatic impact, at a later time, Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Dave Cockrum. I think of those guys, over on the DC side, the artists that were in that cadre as well. I was more of a Marvel guy, so I tend to think of the, Marvel kid, I should say, so I tend to think of the Marvel books. But then you have, Frank Miller and his impact on Batman, his impact on Daredevil, turning that trash character into one of their foundation characters. I tend to think of how strong an impact, whichever creator had on the industry when I think of greatest. So, Alan Moore, I mean, obviously what he did for the industry and the sustainability of the things he created were pretty amazing. How he could take something on the surface looks silly and uninteresting and make it amazing. His talent for that was crazy to me. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a great example. If you look at the cover of that comic, you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you read it and you're like, it was amazing. That
look what he did
crazy.
with Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing, you could go, So those are the ones, greatest of all times, those are the names that pop out at me. But then, you think of people like Lynn Wein. You could just go on and on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a deep well of past
there's
creators
too
and
many.
Current creators.
Yeah, there's too many.
We didn't even touch really any current creators.
We're going to next. That's where I want to go with it next. So, but I do want to dip. I want to throw mine out there.
Yeah, you get to put yours out there.
It's hard to make a choice between. Obviously, you want to say Kirby, but I think Will Eisner.
Yes,
I think to me, Will Eisner is the greatest of all time.
It's hard to argue it
because what he did with formatting, the way he changed the way that the books are written, the way he took it seriously, he opened up like a contract with God is brilliant. As far as impact and like Neil Adams, even though I think he's an asshole, he's a curmudgeonly old man, which is fine. He deserves to be. He's earned that right.
It's what's funny about interject that. What's interesting about Neil Adams is he's an asshole unless you're a comic book artist,
right?
And then he's like the best human being ever.
Exactly.
It's funny.
Yeah. I think he's one of the best of all times. Obviously, for me, George Perez is somebody that's just out of a nostalgia for him. That's out of a love I have for that.
No,
man.
I think that's totally
Golden
legitimate.
and Byrne are probably on mine because of nostalgia.
Right. Bill Sienkiewicz. Look at the work that he did with New Mutants and the abstract form that he brought into it and the multimedia approach before they had digital that he opened the door. I think he changed art forever.
Charles Schultz.
Charles Schultz. Dude, yeah. Definitely Charles Schultz. What about tomorrow though? Who's tomorrow's GOATs? Like I think about guys like Tradd Moore. I think Tradd Moore's changing the way art works, like sequential art works.
Along with Tradd Moore, I would say Justin Jordan. I think he's going to explode at some point.
Yeah.
He's a great writer, and at some point he's just going to explode.
Al Ewing.
You said it before I
Ewing.
could. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hickman.
Hickman's already kind of there.
Yeah.
Like Hickman's somebody like I have a hard time deciding if he's somebody for tomorrow or today or yesterday because he is just so expansive and so broad in what he does and what he brings to the table. It is a science to that man, and he knows the formula. Like he's got an Igor in his basement. Like he is a mad scientist of comics.
Jason Aaron.
Jason Aaron's not quite there yet.
No, he's not there.
I love him,
I think he's potentially. We're talking about tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think Jason Aaron does some really great work without the high concept that Jonathan Hickman has.
Yeah, so Jason Aaron, and I'm sure we'll get in more of this when we talk about our year in review episode and stuff like that. Jason, I was really hyped at the beginning of the year for the work that he was going to be doing when they announced that he was going to be on the Avengers. We knew he was wrapping up a store run, and he's going to be doing Conan. Like, I looked at those three things, and I'm like, oh, this is the year of Jason Aaron, and it really hasn't been. And that's not knocking anything that he's doing, because he's writing genuinely good comics. I just don't think he's writing great comics.
I think that all three of those books are really good.
Yeah.
I think the difference is that he's being outshined by Jonathan Hickman at the moment.
Well,
and
it's not just
Al
that.
Ewing.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, I think that a couple of other people at Marvel right now are doing better work. That doesn't mean that he's not doing great work. It's
No,
just
he is. That's where I'm saying, though. But if we're having the conversation about goats and the best,
Well, we're
of
talking
and everything,
future.
Yeah, I just don't know if he's ever going to be there. And then I found out that he's not writing Conan past issue 12. That's disappointing.
Wow, that's really interesting.
These 12
One more
issues,
issue, huh?
and maybe that's affecting me because from what I understand, these 12 issues is all of the Jason Aaron Conan that we're getting, and this hasn't been the Conan that it's been good and there's some good work being done there, but it's not been the Conan I thought we were going to get out of Jason Aaron. And so when I see that, it deflates that balloon a little bit for me.
He gave us Crom.
Yeah, he did commit the blasphemy of showing us Crom's face.
Nate Powell might be on that list.
Yeah, he's doing some really good, especially if you want to get into the work that he did on March.
Yep. Well, and I've got the two dead that just came out with him and Van Jensen. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I did flip through it and look at it, and the art's just astounding in it.
Mariko Tamaki is somebody that I think has a lot of potential, especially if she gets away from doing like superhero work again and goes back and does work like this one summer. Tilly Walden is somebody that I think is insanely talented for such a young age. She's only in her 20s and she writes with the life experience of an 80-year-old like battle-hardened veteran of life. That work is being done, and I don't think we've seen the end of Neil Gaiman. I think Neil Gaiman's got one more.
To be honest, Neil Gaiman is coming back and finishing Miracle Man. They've just announced it.
Okay.
So, which was the whole point of them doing the re-release. So he is actually going to come in and finish his run on Miracle Man. So we've got that coming. I'm going to throw this out there. I think Freddie Williams is potentially. His art is amazing, and I would love to see him. I love what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see him do some other stuff as well.
One thing I wanted to ask him in the interview and I didn't get to is, are we going to get to see, I don't think I did anyway, are we going to get to see any independent stuff? We're going to get to see any creator-owned work from Freddie Williams?
I wanted to ask him that
Yeah,
too.
and I missed that, and I apologize because that should have been something that we covered in that interview, which I hope everybody really enjoyed as much as we enjoyed giving it out there. Well, all right, guys.
Yeah.
100th episode.
100
and
down.
we didn't talk about any new comics.
That's okay. 100 down, 100 more to come. We're just beginning, people. I don't see any sign of this stopping.
Nah, dude.
We're just going to continue to get better. We're going to continue to make changes to the show that we see as needed to make the show better. And I don't see anything being huge changes. I see it as tweaking here and there, and sometimes those tweaks are bigger than other tweaks.
Do you guys have a favorite part of the show?
Oh boy, that's tough. It depends on the week.
Yeah.
Sometimes doing my personal book review is absolutely my most favorite part. Especially when I dig up an old book that I'm the only one that's ever read, that I think is like amazing, and being able to tell people that, and share somebody an old book that they missed from years past. I really like doing that. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think that the book of the week is again, our own personal book. We call it Book of the Week on the inside here, little inside, behind
Baseball, how the sausage is made.
Our own personal Book of the Week can be the most fun part if I can find a book I'm genuinely excited about bringing. If I'm reading through the books and I'm not finding that book, sometimes it gets me down a little bit, but then, like Matt, maybe I need to dig up some of my old stuff and talk about it in those moments. So
I think my favorite part about the show so far, hands down, besides the fact that, again, I feel like we're like the old men who meet at the cafe on Sunday mornings to like sip coffee and catch up. I love
talk
that.
about the week.
Yeah,
comics,
I love that. But I think one of the best parts of this is when, and I've had it happen a few times now, is somebody walks up or talks to me on Facebooks or does this or that or the other and says, "Hey, I heard you talk about a book and I went and picked it up and I think it's my favorite thing." I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Like that to me has been my favorite part about the show is it happens with you guys. Like you guys, and you've done it for me as well. You guys have said, we'll throw Green Lantern out here, this most recent run of Green Lantern. I didn't jump on that from the start. Because I'm not a Green Lantern guy. I genuinely, Morrison is not somebody that's even in my top 15 creators. I get it why he is for other people, but for me, he's not that. But you guys were like, no, dude, like you need to be reading this book, and the way you talked about it really tapped me into it, and I love it. Like I love what Liam Sharp is doing. It's one of my favorite books this year. So, but that's mine. Like is hearing somebody say, "Hey, I was not going to get this book until you said some things about it, and I picked it up and I loved it."
Yeah.
That's my favorite part about doing this podcast.
Well, and here's the thing. If it happens amongst the three of us, which I know it does, I mean, you brought up some examples there. It's happened for me quite a bit. I can only believe it's happening with people out there.
It's got to be. Yeah. And that's what, I hope so.
And, we're going to continue our at least 50-50 rule, maybe even 75-25. We really try not to be negative on a book.
Yeah.
So that's going to continue. We're not going to tear people down on this show. So
no one should want to do that. I don't understand why people want to do that.
They're just miserable people.
That's got to be what it is.
I'd rather spread. If you want negativity, there's negativity out there.
Yeah.
We're not that. We're going to be positive. And I think this is the first issue or episode that we even talked about the CGers.
We've done it once
probably
or twice,
50 issues.
Oh yeah,
or episodes. It's been a long time.
That's
since
because they've eaten their own and become redundant,
Yep.
and they're all getting sued, which is fun. That's just my personal feelings about the situation. Well, all right, we ready to kind of wrap this up?
Yeah.
We got to go start reading for episode 101.
Yep.
Which, by the way, is supposed to be like next week. I think is when we're doing is next week the questions episode.
Yeah.
I've got to go look at the calendar.
Probably.
My life is revolving around finals.
It's the last Sunday of the month. So
we have on our Facebook page, on the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast Facebook group, which you can become a part of, we have saved at the top of the announcement sections a place for questions. And I want to say that the way we had planned this is questions revolving around gifts, I think is what it was. Because we're coming into the holiday season, there's going to be lots of exchanges happening. I don't know about you guys. I love opening up a present and finding just a big hardcover omnibus just in the middle there, something I really want to read, or just a zine, something I've never seen before. We're nerds at the end of the day. We're still children. We love opening up presents and seeing nerd shit. How do you make those decisions? What's out there? We would love to answer questions about that. We would love for you to ask it because at the end of the day, it helps us make those same decisions. So go do that. And we're going to be back here next week. We're going to talk about some books. We'll talk about those questions. I don't think there's a lot right now, so we might even get to sneak in a little bit of comics talk next week beyond what we normally do. But yeah, that's what I got for that. As always, Wednesday's going to roll around as long as the apocalypse doesn't happen, and then we're going to get new comics in the shop like we do every week. Now, we don't know if these are going to be good. We don't know if these are going to be bad. We don't know if they're going to be ugly. We don't know. We have no clue. We haven't seen them. We don't have advanced copies of these, but we are going to hedge our bets and just take a little bit of a guess and give a little bit of suggestion maybe on what you all who are listening to this show, who have been with us for the 100th ride, what you might want to go pick up. So who wants to jump on this train first?
I'll go. Okay. I'm going to stick on this little theme I've been on, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Infinite Crisis. James Tynion Aaron, I can't say his name, Ladresti, Lee Weeks, and Matt Ryan. And as you guys know, in the original Infinite Crisis, Blue Beetle died. Mm-hmm. In this universe, he survives, and he becomes the Crisis.
Huh.
So, I've just really enjoyed the takes on these dark multiverse books.
So, Marvel Comics Conan 2099, number 1's coming out on Wednesday by Jerry Dugan, Roge Antonia, and Jeff Shaw. So the setting is that Conan in the past was cursed with eternal life. So it is now 2099. He has appears to be a laser or fire sword and a skull on his codpiece. So let's see what this is about.
Time out. Let's back up a little bit. When you first discovered, when it was first brought to your attention that they were bringing Conan into the Marvel Universe, you were not happy about this. You, if I'm not mistaken, you didn't like this idea, but you are on board with Conan 99's Flaming Skull codpiece.
I wouldn't say I'm on board. I'm going to give this a shot, see what this is all about. The explanation, I was like, okay, well, I got to say, that's a pretty good way to make the reason this is happening fit into the Conan universe. A mystic has cursed him with eternal life.
I mean, honestly, it just happened in issue number 11.
So, but Jerry Dugan is writing it, and Jerry Dugan can pull these kind of things off occasionally.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what this is going to be about.
I can't. This is either going to be amazing or destructive.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way I think it's going to have to be. Yeah.
All right, so I've got one that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I am, as you guys know, and maybe you don't if you haven't been listening to the show for a long time, I'm a huge fan of The Crow. I'm a huge fan of the original graphic novel The Crow and of nothing else that has came out of that. I don't like any of the sequels. I don't like any of the books that have come out of that. Now, in saying that, I'm going to give a chance to something. I am going to read The Crow, Hark the Herald, number 1. This is written by Tim Seeley and Meredith Laxton, is on the art duties on that. So every year a group of about 6 people gather for Christmas in a cabin in the far north woods of Wisconsin. But this isn't your average bickering nuclear family. These are 6 of the most prolific killers in North America. Now, last year's sins have risen from the grave, ready to deliver the gift of revenge. Guided by the Crow, Cecilia Wright will give 6 psychos a holiday hammer party.
Holiday hammer party.
So look, I am not a Christmas person. This is not my favorite time of the year. I'm not a festive individual. This is just not for me. But so when you give me a Christmas story that includes the words 6 psychos and a holiday hammer party, this might get me in the spirit. I might have to go deck the halls and walls.
This one's way too close to home.
Tim Seeley writes horror pretty well, so
and that's why when I saw that he was going to be, and he's done some of the other Crow work, I think Tim Seeley is doing the Crow / Hack Slash.
Well, because it's his Hack Slash property.
I'm going to check it out. Like I said, I have there is a better chance than not that this is just going to be a throwaway comic that I won't care. But the phrase "hammer holiday party" or "holiday hammer party" is something that I'm really looking forward to.
There's been a few of the Crow books that I've dug. I can't say I haven't liked any of them.
Nah, I really haven't. I can, like I said, you can't. I can.
I like that answer.
Okay.
Nah.
It's all right.
They weren't for me. And
You've
that's
been wrong
fine.
about Batman today too, so we'll.
Have I though? I don't think I have. You know what I wasn't wrong about? I was not wrong about.
Call your dogs off, Craig.
Chihuahuas. I was not wrong about Freddie Williams II and all of his amazing books. We want to thank him again for sitting down with us once more to chat, to talk about the great works that he's done, all the crossovers, the Batman, the TMNT stuff, Thundercats, just everything he's done is awesome. He-Man, it's rad. He has taken these commercialized things, these hard 80s vestiges of fandom, and just doing brilliant stuff with them. I love his style. I was humbled that he would sit down with us. I know you guys were as well. So do yourself a favor and deck your halls with that. Find some Freddie Williams in somebody's stockings as you're preparing. We're going to be back next week to give you guys some ideas on gifts. A little bit of a holiday prep party.
Yeah, and have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.
Eat lots of turkey. Take lots of naps. Go forth and love some comics. 100. Pew, 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 pew. How the fuck did we do 100 episodes? Like, I've never been this committed to anything in my life.
I don't know. We've done it.
How did this happen?
We're maturing.
Who let us do this? Who was in charge of stopping this
Still
train wreck?
recording?
Yeah. I'll turn it off.
Oh, nobody lit us. We took it.